Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 29th day of June meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the town of Ossining. My name is Sal Carrera, Chairman, and joining me this evening are members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Town Attorney, Building Inspector. For the record, please, everyone, even though they're on mute right now, if not, introduce yourselves.
Sandy Anelli, Secretary.
David O'Neill, member.
John Hamilton,
Member.
Building Inspector.
Jim Blair, member.
David Krieger, member.
Christy Adana, attorney.
And we have an alternate also this evening. An alternate board member.
We're not hearing Tom Wills.
Alternate Tom Wills.
Okay, thank you. We have one hearing this evening. I will read the public notice and then request the applicant or the representative to give a brief explanation of the relief sought. Anyone that has a comment should give us their name and address and give us their input with regards to this application. Because this is a Zoom meeting, we will not be making a decision this evening, as in the past. We will discuss as much as we can this evening. And for now, I will read the notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing in the Town of Ossining Zoning Board of Appeals will be held on Monday, June 29, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. This meeting will be held via video conferencing pursuant to Governor's Executive Order 201-1 dated March 12, 2020, and Executive Order 202.15 dated April 9, 2020, and subsequently extended. Members of the public can join the meeting via computer or mobile app on Zoom using the link below, which is basically Zone meeting. ID is 867-7367-4614. The hearing is on an application of Bethany Arts Community, BAC, 40 Summerstown Road, Ossining, New York, in accordance with the Town of Ossining Zoning Code, Section 200-7B, parenthesis 2, and Section 200-45, parenthesis C, for a special permit. Bethany Arts Community, in parenthesis BAC, is seeking an amendment to their special permit approval to include additional activities and programs that would take place outdoor on the property, such as summer camps designed with creativity, an outdoor children's theater, Theater O, Ossining School Theater Group, River Fund, an organization on the front lines of poverty in Queens, getting children out of the city, use of walking trails for outdoor art exhibits, collaborate with eco-friendly organizations to create awareness of the environment, part of the trail system leading from Ryder Park to Bethany to connect to the Briarcliff Peekskill Trail and T-Town Reservation, ArtoFest, an interactive artistic experience, beehives and community gardens, outdoor and school programs. The property is located at 40 Summerstown Road in the unincorporated area of the Town of Ossining, New York, owned by Bethany Arts Community, Inc., and is identified on the tax map of the Town of Ossining as Section 90.10, Block 3, Lot 27, located in an R41 family residential district. All interested parties are invited to attend the public hearing on video conferencing, Zoom, and/or send comments by email to www.buildingdepartment@townofossining.com, or send comments by regular mail to the Town of Ossining Zoning Board of Appeals, Post Office Box 1166, Ossining, New York, 10562. In the event the zoning board closes the public hearing on June 29th, the public comments will remain open for an additional 7 days after the meeting date for additional written public comment. If the public hearing is adjourned, written public comments will be received until the next meeting. Application materials by ARQ.HT LLC, 100 Executive Boulevard, Suite 204, Ossining, New York, dated February 21st, 2020, are available for public inspection at the townofossining.com. There's CMS, there's publications, all documents, zoning board, Bethany Arts 2020 amendment, by order of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Sal Carrera, Chairman, dated June 19th, 2020. I'd like to get some guidelines into play with regards to how I would like to move forward on this application and how we will interface with, we have 51 participants so far. Is that each of the board members will ask questions and/or make comments on an individual basis, and the applicant or the representative will either answer this evening, or they will have the opportunity over the next 7 days to write their answers to the questions that will come up tonight. Public comments will not have a time limit, but in order to expedite this hearing, I would appreciate that anybody giving any type, either pro or con, not be repetitive in what someone else had already said. If you agree or disagree with someone, you can get up, give your name, and say you agree or disagree for the reasons, but being repetitive is not going to make this board meeting go any quicker. Applicant will answer questions in writing if necessary, and I'm sure he's going to have that opportunity because there are a number of questions that have come in written to this board that I will reiterate to Sandy to send out to the applicant for answers in writing to numerous questions other than doing them on an individual basis. Is that understood by everybody so far?
Sal, just one quick question. We're going to have the applicant make an initial presentation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Before the applicant gives this presentation, and again, a little background on this, is that in 2016, Bethany Arts, a not-for-profit philanthropic institution catering to the arts, requested a special permit in an R40 zone to engage in a number of activities indoors. The ZBA granted very specific approvals for all indoor uses to Bethany Arts. Today, are requesting an amendment to the original special permit for outdoor use of the site. The requested items back in 2016 were identified in 4 different groups. Children community, BAC will create a family-oriented after-school and community-based programs of art instruction and appreciation. Day use, BAC will offer local residents the opportunity to utilize studio space to create and present their work. These spaces can be used for daily projects or longer-term projects. Artistic residency, BAC will provide short-term and subsidized spaces, as well as a supportive environment for artists of various levels to produce while participating in programs for and with the community. And for participants, the general public will benefit from the various programs offered at BAC by attending performances, art exhibits, cultural presentations, and support local artists. I want to take this opportunity to thank the numerous people that wrote letters in. Approximately 24 letters came in favor of, and approximately 24 letters came in that had major concerns with regards to this application. Some of the favorable ones, which I want to mention, and they are all online for you to take a look at. was staff of BAC and also the owner of Camp O, who I really appreciated, clarified that for the past 2 years, Camp O was very successful with their indoor and outdoor presentations of camp, not realizing it was not an approved use via the CBA that was granted in 2016. While all of the additional uses and activities that are being requested this evening by Bethany are laudable, the questions that the ZBA members have to take into consideration are, number one, are they related to the arts? And number two, are they allowed by the special permit in an R40 zone? That being said, I'd like the representative or the owner of BAC to give his presentations, and then we'll try to move forward with the questions that we all have.
Sal, would you just, pardon me for interrupting, but could you repeat the second item that was to be covered, the question to be answered? The first being, are they related to the arts? And the second was what?
Are they related to the arts, number one? And number two, are they allowed in the special permit area of an R40 residential zone?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, may I have a representative or the owner of BAC give their presentation?
I'm David Lyons, the founder and executive director of Bethany Art Community. And JB Hernandez, our architect, will present a presentation. JB.
We have a presentation. Sandy, am I going to be able to do a share screen? Sandy?
Yes, you can share your screen if you'd like to do so.
Good evening. My name is JB Hernandez. I'm the architect for Bethany. I've been involved throughout from the beginning when we started with this process of creating the art community center. Today with us, we have David Lyons, Laura Verital, and Jessica Irons. And also we have a legal counsel that's going to be listening and participating if needed in the conversation. This is
Who's the counsel?
The counsel is Lauren Erbs and Hi Wayne Layton. Here's the names, you have it.
I see it now.
Yep.
What's the name of counsel?
They're displaying the screen so you can.
Okay, I see it. Thank you.
No problem. These are the items that were part of the official hearing notice, as Chairman Carrera pointed out. This is, we're all familiar with the Cabano area, and we have the Stonegate area, and this is the Bethany, the 24 plus acres that we have here. This you can see in the aerial view some of the improvements that became from the original site plan approval. This is what we've been discussing and we've been trying to adjust as we move along. Area for sculptures, and events in the garden area, and a more updated drawing showing more realistic location of the trails. Not as originally we had it longer, longer trails. Now there are shorter trails right now. Again, another aerial view to show some of the trails and some of the orchard that was planted and some of the improvement that was done on the property. Just to take you along a little bit in the special permit timeline, Bethany was founded in 2015. In November of 2016, we were in front of your board, and your board was issued a special permit for us to utilize Bethany Art Center. In December, a month later, we obtained site plan approval. And after a year of construction and work, on January 2018, the Bethany Arts Center opened. In October 2019, we obtained a renewal of the special permit by your board, 2-year renewal, I believe. And it is at this time during the special permit renewal process, it became apparent that and brought to our attention that due to this success beyond our expectation, we had expended beyond our anticipated listed activities, especially with the camp. The special permit did not include any such activities. And so at the board request, we saw an amendment to the special permit approval to include these activities, and that's where we are here tonight. In anticipation of having this approval in place, there was some planning. We had hoped to have camps this summer, but due to COVID-19 and everything that's been going on, we have not had a meeting since March of this year. We had one scheduled for March 16, and which is going to reiterate that no outdoor camps have been held since the November meeting or activity that we discussed. This is some samples of the past 2 years, what it has happened with Bethany. A lot of the community art that has helped in all the group supports that we have. And also we also have read or tried to address some of the, or been addressing some of the issues that we saw or read in our neighbors' comments about traffic. Most camps, the province will be bus in, and we don't see an increase in traffic due to the drop-off, either because it will be with the school buses or it will be alternate time drop-off schedule. Noise, we are aware of all the noise activity. Most of the noise activity will occur not near the property lines. And if we go back, if you see the aerial view that we had of all the properties, you will see that the neighboring properties are much closer to each other than what they are to the trails or to the Bethany Art Center. Also, the footprint, we're not increasing pavement, we're not increasing size of the building. We're not proposing to remove any trees. These are all the campus, all environmental friendly activities. I know there are some questions about Oktoberfest security and how that will work, and one of the board members can address that. Also, the connection to the Brackley Peacekeeper Trail and Teton Reservation, we know that that's been a concern, but we have added some additional information by David Lyons that it has addressed though in some of these other issues. So, and also the number of participants is something we can talk about as well with the board members. And this is just to give you an idea of all the local communities and groups that we've been involved with in helping and asking, from the school district to Theater Row, as you mentioned, and all these other groups that in the River Fund that they've been utilizing our property, or not our property, but our art center. So I don't know if David, you would like to add something, or Lori, to this?
If anybody has any specific questions, I'd be more than glad to answer them. I did follow up with a more detailed explanation of the 10 points that were on the original application. Specifically for the trail coming from Ryder Park. Again, the town and the Westchester Land Trust came to Bethany. We're trying to be helpful. Here since that initial meeting, and I don't foresee this going too much further. But again, should something come up, of course, we will come back to the town to, if any trail is created, and go through the process that we need to go through for that. Is there
Any other additional comments, George or Mr. Lyons?
No?
Okay, so let's go to a couple of questions.
Yeah, could you elaborate on the programs with the school district? Could you talk about what goes on there?
So far, what we've had has been after school. We started with a Hispanic music and dance program, tapping into the large population of Hispanic people in Ossining. We've worked with Theater O in a sort of theater after school. In coordination with Theater O, there was a bilingual, although it was online, this past spring. Jessica, maybe you can come up with some of the other items that we've had. Jessica Irons, our board member and Theater O owner.
Yes. Hi, I can't see myself. JB, could you stop sharing your screen?
Okay.
Thank you. So last year, in coordination with the school district, we did a where the kids were dropped off at Bethany from the schools. We did a bilingual theater program where they met for 45 minutes. They took an acting class in English and Spanish, and 45 minutes they took a musical theater class in both English and Spanish, and they did that for 6 weeks, and it culminated in a presentation for families. It was pretty great. They arrived at Bethany. We gave them a healthy snack, and then, 15 of them would go to one class, 15 would go to another, and then they would switch.
Was it all indoor or outdoor?
It was all indoor.
Thank you.
Was all indoor. And additionally, I used to be the president of Ossining Matters, the school district education foundation. And right after I was president, I think we held our benefits, the annual gala that raises the majority of the funding for Ossining Matters. We held it for 2 years at Bethany. It was a great space. It was very conducive to the event. I'm trying to think if we've done so many things in the last 2 years. I'm trying to, right now, that's all I can come up with for what the school district, certainly Bethany is a community partner with the school district, and I know that the school district is very interested in using outdoor space with their community partners in the fall. I think that there is, both David and I have attended community partner meetings for the last 2 years. We also, and Bradley's here. Bradley Morrison, who's the head of cultural arts, can also speak to what happens in the school district between the school district and Bethany. But we are also, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No problem.
We also hope to utilize the space indoors and outdoors to build on what we've already started, to include as much of the school district, and however we can help and be, partners together, especially in this time of limited indoor space, of that being limited.
Yeah.
Mr. Lyons, this is Sal Carrera. What is the driving force behind the additional amendment for all outdoor activities?
It is really to expand on the idea of art being unlimitless, and no such thing as too much art. Also using the outdoors, I grew up, I guess, in a different world where being outside was much more, happened every day, and it would be great to provide a space that it can, again, happen every day. In fact, during the pandemic, the local kids have been, coming onto the property, the ones who live on Tavano, riding their bikes, just hanging out, doing what kids do. And again, it's just to promote a wellness of being outdoors, an influence with the arts, of making a space where everyone can grow and grow together.
All right, so, part of my questions and comments will relate to that even though the original approval for the arts was for indoor use, the past 2 summers, you had a camp there anyway. That is correct or incorrect?
That is correct. As you can see from the meetings from the meeting in November, I believe it was, where I was present before the zoning board, that again, it was a misunderstanding and miscommunication and just not understanding on my part. And it was a complete mistake on my part. And again, I profusely apologize then, and I will profusely apologize again. It was not done out of malice or trying to be underhanded. It was utilizing the trail, which was part of our original application. So it really did not occur to me to have kids on the trail would have been that big of an issue. And upon our going for renewal and all of these things being present, I apologized and I said I would not move forward with anything. And we have not moved forward with anything, not only because of the corona, but because we have not been able to get in front of the board to do anything.
All right, so with regards to that, is that if you take a look at your web page in January of 2020, and this is prior to any COVID-19, you still advertise for summer camp coming this August, at least the application that I saw, even without approvals in place, just like you did the 2 years prior, which I understand, and we accepted your apology. And again, you said you would not do anything without getting approvals, but you take a look at your webpage in January and you were advertising at $600 per child, a summer camp, a show camp, okay, for this coming year. So to me,
Can you address that?
may I finish, please?
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
No problem, no problem. So I appreciate, and so does the board, with regards to your intent and all of the laudable activities you want to go do. But what comes back to haunt me to some degree, especially when this is for the arts, is that I could not put my finger on for the arts when you rented out your parking lot for nothing but, a stage parking area for a movie that was being done. And I take a look at a number of the new activities that you want to do outdoor other than the walking trails. And that would be, the summer camps, the outdoor theater, the Theater O. How does that relate all to the arts from a philanthropic, obligation on your end? I'm trying to put together 2 things: for the arts, and also what's allowed in an R40 zone, and whether or not everything that you're telling us now is a complete itinerary of what you want to do to that site, or are you going to come back in 3 months or 6 months and say, oh, by the way, I really like to go do this on the site?
Thank you. Hold, Jessica, let me take care. Thank you very much. As far as putting things up on the website and having them on the website, the way it's been my understanding that creating camps and projects in the future is that, especially camps, is that you need to let people know. Parents especially are looking for what their kids are going to do starting in January, February, and March, with the idea that we were going to be in front of the board no later than March, expecting to have a couple of meetings. I could not have imagined COVID, number one, but that the process would have taken that long to where we would not have been able to have that in August. Again, with everything that has been going on, if you've taken a look at our website, along with probably many other websites, things that are up there today will get taken down tomorrow because they get canceled because of the COVID situation. Addressing the situation with the parking on the lot, again, we went over this last meeting, and again, I apologized. I went on some faulty information, and the line of having to pay for everything that we create and giving our first program, after school program, was pretty much for free to get those things paid for. I overstepped my bounds. I apologize. I will apologize again. We haven't had any situation since, and we won't have a situation again unless I have permits in writing in my hand, and the town is fully aware of everything that's going on. As far as connecting all of these items to the arts, that would be the only item that would be a stretch. But again, I point out that we do need to, Con Edison is a for-profit entity, and if I want to have gas and electricity, I need to make some money somewhere, and I decided to try and make it there so I wouldn't have to charge the kids at our Hispanic music and dance program, which we had 40 participants and 36 scholarships. Everything else that you mentioned, I believe, is directly connected with the arts. If there's one specific item that is not, I'll be more than glad to address it.
David, this is JJ. I'm outside counsel to Bethany Arts. Is it okay if I speak for a little bit on the arts component and whether these things are or not artistic activities, philanthropic artistic activities?
I would be more than glad to hear your point of view, JJ. This is JJ Whitner, it's our attorney.
And let me just say, just so you know, by way of background, I only represent tax-exempt organizations, primarily organizations like Bethany Arts that are charities. About 90% of my practice is charities, and I've been doing only that for 20 years. So if I could just speak to the artistic component, I mean, to me, the definition under any federal or even state statute of artistic and educational is extremely broad, and those are all considered charitable activities, whether, you know, someone else deems them not to be. But under federal and state law, any artistic and educational activities are 501c3 tax-exempt activities. They're in the charitable world sort of just by virtue of what they are. And they don't have to sort of pass muster on whether, you know, anyone feels that they're valid or invalid. But so in terms of the activities being artistic, I feel like, and I'm happy to address any of them that you either are wondering about whether they would pass muster at the IRS or under state law. I'm happy to talk about that. But if I could, and I will say this, I'm not a zoning lawyer. I defer to all of you for that. And I understand there was a permit issue with the parking lot, but just in terms of a tax-exempt organization is allowed to rent out its space and earn that kind of money, and it's not taxable and it's not problematic, and it happens all the time. So I just sort of wanted to add that in, and if anyone has specific questions about artistic activities, educational activities, or things like that, I'm happy to answer them.
We will get to each individual page that he sent in with regards to, you know, whether or not we all agree from a legal standpoint that I'm not an attorney. And I'm fully aware of not-for-profits, but I also know you have to make a living, and I'm fully aware of that. But it's hard for me, and I'll have my other board members, you know, talk about this, but, you know, a vegetable garden, honeybees, I mean, to me, that's really, I mean, art is in the heart of the holder. It's just, you know, it's hard for me to say this is art with regards to having whether it's a community garden or an individual garden, because there's been some misinterpretations with regards to the presentation, is that in the original, they were going to break up plots for the community, and that was going to be a BAC community vegetable garden. Bees are not allowed in the town of Ossining, and there's a specific, code with regards to that. And I don't see how that is art related in any way, shape, or form. I understand what you're saying about the parking lot. But yeah, and I'm not the building inspector, and I would ask him at a future date if it ever happened again. But renting out the parking lot, okay, this is supposed to be a charitable organization on anything and everything that you're doing. And when you take a look at Camp O, is that some of the questions I would have for Mr. Lyons is that did he have all of the county, state, and local permits to have a camp there with all the right insurance? And did the town of Ossining have any of this paperwork in front of them before, for 2 years, he had a camp indoor and outdoor? I do not have a problem, and I don't think my board members have a problem with regards to anything indoor. Is the main crux of this additional amendment now is for all outdoor activities. And I could ask a question and say, so for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for Camp O or summer camp or outdoor activities, what are you doing relating to the arts with regards to that?
Well,
I'm going to let Jessica speak.
Can I address that?
yeah.
So with regards to the permit, when we look into camps and doing them, there are two kinds of camps in Westchester County. There's an educational camp, which is like something that is thematic. So a lacrosse camp is actually an educational camp, a rock band camp, a theater camp, a Harry Potter camp. These are all thematic camps, and they don't actually require a permit from the county. So we didn't have to get a permit from the county. We also don't serve food, and we don't have any swimming activities, which is another big component when I looked into that. However, in terms of the artistic activities, everything in that camp is viewed through an artistic lens. We do improv classes where we put Harry Potter characters together. They and you'll take Hermione and Dobby, and they will come together in the Forbidden Forest, and they will do a scene that doesn't have. They will create a scene. They created their own Quibbler articles. The Quibbler is the Harry Potter newspaper that they both wrote and illustrated. They created Patronus puppets and Dementor puppets. They wrote wizard rock songs and performed them for each other. So in general, everything that happens in that camp is through the lens of art. Now, they are certainly involved in the imagination world of Harry Potter, which I would argue is absolutely an artistic process. I would also say that, and our show camp is indoors. It's always been indoors. It's never been outdoors. We've done it indoors. We put on a play, we build a set with the kids, and they create a piece of theater together. Last summer, it was Alice in Wonderland. They took huge swaths of fabric and created with chalk. They created on the swaths of fabric, they created a magical world. We hung them as flats. They built their own set and they performed it, and they were ages 6 to 10. And there were 11 of them. So that would be the artistic activities that Theater O does at Bethany.
I'd like to speak on the gardens and the bees. Excuse me. The bees, I've reached out to the town supervisor to inquire on how we go about to get some amendments made for having bees. Upon looking at the zoning code, I could find nothing that stated bees, and it was not until one of my neighbors pointed out the section that says if it's not listed here, it's not allowed. That was a little unusual, I thought, but again, I could put the bees in with the idea of that they are all good for the world. We need more of them. Honeybees are so important for the way of life that we live. As far as the gardens go, I will disagree with you respectfully and present the idea of culinary arts and what can be done with those, and intermingling it with an educational aspect to get a little bit, get some healthy food that kids can grow, harvest, and eat and prepare in a very artistic way. So I believe that you can include the gardens to include culinary arts. When we first started this project, our community is in our name. I thought it would be beneficial to offer the community places to grow their own vegetables, with the pushback from some of the neighbors about having public people, the public allowed within so many feet of their property. I have be more than glad to remove the community component and just keep it to, employees and people who are affiliated with Bethany, who have been checked out, would only be working the gardens and hopefully creating educational programs to go along with those.
David, one other additional thing, this is Lauren Earps, David's counsel, Bethany's counsel. Permitted use under, for R40, the one family residence district, are commercial agricultural operations, including raising of field and garden crops, truck garden, nursery, or commercial greenhouses, subject to certain restrictions, but they currently comply with those restrictions. So it's not an exception to the permitted use for the R40 district.
So that is a commercial use, and there, you guys are nonprofit, so that section doesn't apply. You're not a commercial, you're not selling stuff, you don't have, that section is not relevant to what's being discussed here.
Who's speaking?
Mark Schultz, 14 Tavana Road.
Okay, I will have to look into that. I don't know if that is.
I mean, it's pretty clear the word commercial, you guys are not commercial.
Yeah, you're a not-for-profit, full of traffic. I mean, this is all not-for-profit.
Right.
I mean, and you're right, because I read that code, and it is with commercial. I understand what Mr. Lyon said with regards to how to back into it as an art, with regards to maybe originally it was breaking up lots and whether or not you were going to rent them out to the community people and or now to BAC. I wanted to get a full explanation of that, which I think he has shed some light on, and I appreciate that. But I also know that it is not a commercial entity, and I don't think in the special permit area of an R40 that pertains to you guys.
Well, I was never meant to rent out any spots to anybody. They were going to be given free access.
No, it's just that your attorney was saying that this was allowed under the code under this commercial use thing, and that's not correct.
I understand what you're saying, and my attorney will look into it. We can get back.
Yes.
Okay.
But again, we are not going to be renting out any of the space.
I understand. I just was clarifying what your attorney was saying. That's all.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that input. With regards to eco-friendly organizations.
Al, may I say something here real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, David, I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. You spoke to the town supervisor about possibly changing the law or whatever the case may be regarding the bees that you have. But until such time as they agree to do something, you are not allowed to have them. You can, as an option, file a zoning board appeal for a variance, which might go through. But either you'd have to apply to the zoning board or you would have to get rid of the bees until such time as a law is created that would allow them.
Okay, I apologize. I thought I had to go to the Board of Supervisors because they were the ones that made the code, but that's what was my impression. You're telling me I need to go to file an application with the zoning board, not the board of,
You have two options. You can go to the town board. It's not the town board of supervisors, it's the town board, and you can ask that they create a new law.
the zoning.
Time as they do, though, you would have to either remove the bees or request a variance from the zoning board for keeping the bees on the property. So you'd have to file a separate zoning application for that.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear that it was the zoning I have to go to and not the board of supervisors.
Yeah, I want to, reference again, your comments from last October when we were renewing this and the problems with the parking, that you spoke to the town supervisor or any of its members or the administration. The bottom line, and we said this before, and I'll reiterate it again today, is that there is a town supervisor and there are members of a town board. They have various boards, like the ZBA and the planning board. Those boards are the ones that make decisions with regards to requests for zoning changes, amendments, special zoning. It is not the town supervisor or the board unless, okay, it is a specific, spot zoning that they're going to change themselves. That's up to them. But when it comes to zoning issues or changing the current zoning, unless they change it by a complete full board, and it has to do with, the whole town, this is not like spot zoning. You have to come, and like we said before, you go to the building inspector, everything is transparent. Everything is transparent. You ask a question, you get an answer, or you get a recommendation of putting in an application for something like you're doing now for additional uses in an R40 special permit, okay? And I guess while we're at it, John Hamilton, our building inspector, we already approved a certain number of items for indoor use as a special permit in this R40 zone. And that is specific. It's all there in what we agreed to and voted on, is that in everything that Mr. Lyons has brought forward to date, okay, is there an interpretation that you could give us that would include all of these items, like a summer camp and a Camp O, outdoor activities outdoor for philanthropic and arts-related usage?
I believe I did provide one that was part of the packet. It was I took the 10 bullet points that were on the...
Yeah, I know, but I'm asking John whether or not these items that you listed, and they are basically art-based educational summer camp, an outdoor children's theater, river fund, use of walking trails for outdoor exhibits, collaboration with eco-friendly organizations, trail systems, Horticulture Fest, outdoor and school programs, whether or not, I don't know if there's another one for another page here. Oh yeah, the honeybee and the vegetable gardens, whether or not they fall into the special permit basis of an R40 zone.
I understand that, and it's...
I'm asking John, I'm sorry, Mr. Lyons. I'm asking Mr. Hamilton.
Okay. In the normal situation, the answer to that is no. Camps, et cetera, are not allowed. However, you are indicating that it's philanthropic. And I think if you presented to the board some type of proof that each item on there is philanthropic in its majority, for example, one of the camps that you mentioned, if it's an 8-hour camp, how many hours is it broken down? Whereas the majority of the time towards these kinds of activities and how it ties into a philanthropic situation. I think that's what you would need to submit. It could be analyzed and then a decision would be made based on that is my feeling.
Can I ask a question? This is JJ Leitner again. Can I ask a question about that, please? My question is, and maybe I'm coming at this from the point of view of dealing mostly with the IRS and state level definitions of philanthropic and artistic and educational, but when you say the majority of the day, and you're talking about an educational arts camp, where is the authority for having us, and I'm not suggesting that you don't have the authority, I'm just asking the question, where is the authority for us to prove to you that all 8 hours are artistic and educational when it's a children's educational and artistic camp and they're there the whole day? What would you suggest that lunchtime is not artistic and educational? Because under any regime at the federal or state level, there's no question that a camp for children that's artistic and educational, and by the way, the camp doesn't even have to have, as this one does or would, have artistic and educational components to be a 501c3 eligible entity, because the IRS and any state entity would see any camp for children with activities for children, indoor or outdoor, as something that is eligible for 501c3 status as a tax exempt concern. So what is the justification for saying that we would need to tell you that every hour of every day is spent on something artistic or educational for you to approve this?
Well, let me go back and I'll reiterate what John is alluding to, is that what I'm asking, John, is that in the special permit R40 zone, there's nothing in there that allows a summer camp or, okay, daycare or after-school activities. It's not listed as a use. We had no problem in granting this 3 years ago because it was all going to be all indoor and didn't affect a residential zone. So with me personally, and I'm only one person on this board, is that you're asking, or your client is asking, for numerous items that are not listed as R40 special permit uses. Now, if you're coming to me, and there's something to think about, is if you're coming to me and saying, I want a use variance for that site, that's a little different story, because then there's different obligations and criteria that you have to follow. But when I back into this, and listen, like I said, I'm not an attorney. I don't know what the IRS rules and regulations are with a not-for-profit. We're all novices looking into this. These are all laudable uses before, during, or after COVID-19. But the zoning is the zoning. I didn't write the zoning. I follow what the zoning code basically says. And it says this is an R40 zone. And there are areas in the zone for special permits, and a majority of these items don't fit into it.
Let me just say something, if I could. We're not, when I look at the zoning code, whether or not you're tax exempt is meaningless to me. That doesn't mean anything. I look at to see what the use is for. You're a philanthropic organization and you're using these things in a philanthropic way. So all I'm asking as the zoning compliance officer is to show me, well, how many hours per day? Do I expect you to include lunch? Of course not. Do I expect you to include breaks? No, I don't. But if you're going to tell me, somebody comes in and says, well, we spend 20 minutes doing arts, the rest of the time we go out and play baseball. That's why we ask these questions. Because, well, you can shake your head, but that's why we ask questions. We have to find out exactly what you're using it for. If you're using it for 90% of the day is philanthropic, I can understand it. If we're using it for 10%, I have difficulty with that. So that's the reasoning that I use. Whether you're tax exempt or not doesn't mean anything to me.
Mr. Hamilton, just real quick, Mr. Hamilton, I understand what you're looking for, and I will give you as many details as far as the use of the day as possible with all these different information.
That's super, Dave. Thanks.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to, move forward with regards to answering some of these questions.
I think Mr. Blair would like to say something. Mr. Blair is raising his hand.
Who?
Mr. Blair was raising.
He's muted.
But I don't see anybody coming in. So what I'd like to do is
John,
One-
Sal?
There we go. One by one, I'd like to have the board members start asking questions or give comments.
Well, I guess I'll do it that way.
Good.
I'd like to just address the question to John. John, have you looked at permitted uses B4 and whether or not the uses which you're finding not to be allowed because we have some fairly specific philanthropic and eleemosynary requirements that are attached. Does all that just get sort of swept away under 4?
Well, Jim, we haven't made a decision on anything. I'm not
Well,
saying.
no, I'm talking about when you're looking at it, when he comes to you.
What I'm saying is that I'm looking at what was presented to us. This is what was presented to us. They're requesting a variance on philanthropic grounds, and that's what we're looking at. Nobody said anything about applying for another special permit. I'm looking at what they've applied for, and that's where I'm going. If you look at this other section 4, you'd have to look at section C as well, which says any such use shall not be conducted as a business enterprise. Whether or not that would fall in that, I can't answer that question.
Well, I think, wouldn't it be true, John, that if it's an eleemosynary operation, that by definition, it would not be a business enterprise?
Well, Jim, again, I have no proof to anything other than people telling me, well, this is what we're going to do. Normally, you know, we have a lot of attorneys on the screen. You'll ask for some kind of proof. I can't answer questions when I don't have any information.
Chrissy, are you there, Chris?
Yep.
Can you give any insight into what Jim is asking?
Well, so what's before the board is an amendment to the special permit that was granted in 2016. And as it's been discussed, that use is the philanthropic institutional use. And so what Mr. Hamilton and the board is looking for is ways to understand how all these new uses that the applicant is proposing fit within that use as it's used in the zoning code. No one has, that's the only application that's before this board is for an amendment to the existing special permit. That's how it was presented in 2016, and that's how it was approved. The applicant could make an application for another special permit. I think we would have to look into whether you can have multiple principal permitted uses on a lot and whether that's advisable. But that's something that's not really before this board right now and hasn't really been presented as such, and may end up being a moot point if, based upon what the applicant submits, the board and the building inspector are satisfied that what they're presenting does fit within that use as they've been approved to this point.
I was just asking John for a reading, since he was giving us a detailed reading on eleemosynary, whether or not, if he read for the things that we're talking about here, would in his judgment fall within the section 4 and the language there. I was asking John for his opinion.
Yeah, my opinion at this time, Jim, is I would like more information. I don't want to give an opinion then find out that it's wrong when I get different information.
Well, you have information in front of you, John, as to the things that are occurring and have been presented by this applicant.
Jim, if you listen to Mr. Lyons, he said he would get back to us with regards to the question of how does all this fit into, you know, his request and, okay, regarding the arts. So let him answer that, and then we can get back. Do you have any other questions?
I may have some more, Sal, but I'll pass.
Okay, next. David O.
Yeah, hi, Sal. This is David O'Neill. So I did have some questions that were initially related to the package we all received in the mail probably about a week or so ago, and then kind of a follow-up to that is there was a plan shown earlier that looked to differ substantially from the plan that was shown. But sort of a general comment related to the plans that were submitted is I really don't have a good handle on what outdoor activities are being proposed to be conducted on what areas of the site. There's sort of general hatched areas on a diagram for the garden for outdoor events. But I think what I'd like to see is a drawing that shows the site plan with a little bit more context relative to adjacent neighbors. There's something along the lines of 35 to 40 properties that abut this property. So it's hard to really get a handle on, what activities are being proposed in which areas of the site and sort of the proximity to individual adjacent properties, I think. And then secondly, there are a number of outdoor activities proposed, and the question related to that is there any sort of site modifications or physical construction that would be related to having an outdoor theater performance? Are there amphitheaters? I believe in the application or the meeting from last fall, there was mention about having some sort of portico or other area related to outdoor activities. So I guess getting a better handle on what these outdoor activities entail, sort of beyond a hatched area, on a site plan.
I would like to throw in that with my more detailed explanation, we will not reconfigure, but we will add more details to the drawing of the property and be a little more site specific on the specific areas of the property when we submit the additional details that Mr. Hamilton is also looking for.
So I think that would be useful. I think JB had shown an aerial photo, which did show a lot of neighboring context. So it was more of a composite on that type of photo or something along those lines, that would be useful.
And then adding to that, I would definitely want to have that 100-foot buffer per the regulations of how that would affect both sides of the piece of property and the backyard residents that face on to the site. So yes, I think more detail is definitely necessary on that.
Definitely will give it.
So we will definitely then create a more detailed site plan, and we will bring all the properties, surrounding properties, so we can locate those and relate, give it a more context of its proximity to the activities and which activities.
Okay.
Thank you.
My other two Davids, anything from you guys?
Well, yeah. Sal, Dave Krieger here.
Okay, Dave.
Hi. I would appreciate more detailed explanations of all the proposed activities and how it relates to the art, and also some thought about the neighboring homes, about their impact on the homes as far as the traffic and noise and possible trespassing of campers, just as an input.
I will add all those details to the best of my ability when I send in this additional information.
Okay, and in addition to that, with regards to your architect, depending on what this board may or may not approve in the future, I think the architect should take into consideration that depending, again, on what we vote on, whether or not, a traffic study is going to be necessary or an environmental impact, especially with regards to digging up the property and planting gardens and the addition of school buses coming in and out of that site on a state road. I think that would be very important and necessary for us to have with regards to something in an official statement.
Excuse me, are you telling me you want me to do another traffic study?
Well, the bottom line is that you're
to be clear,
your negative environmental impact statement from 2016, okay, did not include any of the additional uses that you want today that are outdoor.
Okay, no, I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you need another environmental study and another.
I would be, depending on, I'm just making it aware, I'm being transparent, is that depending on how this board votes, and I'm only one vote, is that I would be asking for that depending on what we vote on or do not vote on.
So we will see if we meet, there's certain thresholds that we can review, that we see if we meet those two, that will require a new environmental study. I don't believe we do, but we will certainly look into it.
Okay, David?
Good evening, and thanks for your time and your presentation, and thanks for the public for participating. So a couple of things. First, could you talk a little bit about the things that were in your 2016 application, most notably the outdoor things, most notably the meditation trails that were going to be rehabilitated and put to use, and also the apple orchard that was going to be rehabilitated and was going to be used. Did those activities occur, and what happened there?
Yes, as far as the original plan, we did, and you can see some from the up shots of the back property. We did cut in the trail as proposed, maintaining it, wood chips. Public is more than glad to come and use it, and we did replant the orchard. I'd have to double check my numbers, but it was approximately 20 trees, a mixture of apples, peaches, and pears.
Okay, and they'll take years before they're mature enough to produce and do more with them, or are they?
Well, I it definitely will take a few more years. They are producing fruit this year, nothing major. Again, my idea was, first of all, fruit trees are good for the environment. It was something that was already existing when we took over the property, and so I wanted to bring it back to life, but there was nothing to be saved, so we put in all new trees. My original idea was to have the kids on campus, and we would be doing practicing a still life, and the kid would have to go out into the field and pick their own piece of fruit and bring it back and draw the piece of fruit. Hopefully one of them would have a bite mark in it because he got hungry on the way back. That was my original intention for the orchards, was strictly more ornamental than anything. They are not big enough, and there's not enough of them to really do anything other than that with them.
Yeah. And are the meditation trails, are there sculptures on those trails now, or are they?
There are not at this time. It's really just a trail. I would like to put some benches out along the trail for people to sit. Part of our application now is to make access of the trails more for like an exhibit, so we can have artists put installations, pieces of artwork, which then can be enjoyed by the public as they walk by and see a sculpture. I was hoping that the sculptures would be climbable so the children could come, and it would not be usually you see don't touch the art. I'm not a big fan of that. So the idea of like, please touch the art and have kids interact with the art on the trails was another thought that I had.
Okay. And just by the by on the bee thing, as you probably know, many Westchester towns have bee ordinances because they wanted to encourage beekeeping in light of the pressure, the ecological pressures that have been put on bees over the last decade due to pesticides and such. So when the town does choose to create ordinances to support beekeepers in the town, there are plenty of neighboring towns that have already done that, and would certainly have text that could be used to create those town laws if necessary. A couple more questions. So with I think a lot of the questions with regards to the outdoor activities are probably going to come down to what you could imagine as being the number of people, the number of cars, the number of external things if they're going to be outdoors. So I think would encourage you to provide those, to the best of your ability, to provide those kinds of details back to the board when you create materials for the board and the public to review.
I absolutely shall. I was hoping to delve into that detailed in the description that I gave for each of the 10 bullet points. Just to get back to the bees, again, I'm not sure who I need to go to, but I'm hoping that not to have Bethany just given permission to be bees, but that the code be changed for the whole town, because I looked at the Ossining Village Code. They have codes for bees. I followed their rules in that there was none. So I'm hoping to get the town to make for everybody, not just for Bethany, rules and regulations for the bees, permits and whatnot.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
Speak to whoever, I'm not exactly, that's why I asked about going to the Board of Supervisors, is that I thought for a town-wide alteration, it was them, but if I'm understanding Mr. Carrera correctly, it's the zoning board I need to go to.
Well,
So for a zoning change, you have to go to the town board.
yeah, so just to clarify, David, the rules are that, it sounds like, that because there is nothing in the town code that allows for bees, the town code has been restrictive in saying it doesn't allow for bees, but
Correct.
the town board has the authority to either do one of two things: create the code, much like almost every other municipality in Westchester has already created code allowing for beekeeping in the town and creating what the rules are around that, such that properties could have beekeeping, or creating a variance such that, a zoning change such that the properties in R40 would be allowed to have bees. Either way, it's unfortunately not on the table right now, so this would be a variance discussion.
Oh, absolutely. And just to be clear, when you said the board, which board did you mean?
The
Town of Ossining.
Can I
board.
speak to this? Can I, sorry, I want to be clear, and I think I want to put this to bed. I think this is a conversation that you have with John Hamilton offline. I think he's already given you some of the information. There's two mechanisms available. If you want an amendment to the code, that's the town board, the legislative board of the municipality. There is nothing on the books right now, and the town board is under no legal obligation to undertake a legislative act. That's not to say that they might not be inclined to do it under appropriate circumstances, and you can certainly present it to them, but there's no guarantee that's going to happen. So, or when it would happen if it was. So for the time being, right now, bees are not allowed. The building inspector has made that determination. And if, when, and until the town board decides to allow beekeeping under whatever circumstances it may decide, your only remedy in order to be able to keep the bees on your property is to seek a variance from the zoning board, this board that you are before right now, but that is not an application that is currently before this board. So
I understand that.
So for the purposes of this application, the beekeeping is not up for consideration.
Right, I understand. I just wanted the clarity on who I go ask, and I will reach out to the zoning board tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, and on the Peekskill Trail and T-Town, the trail system connecting through, could you speak more to that and what's the status of that and who's involved and so forth?
The Westchester Land Grant and the town board supervisor came to me early on and presented the idea of connecting Ryder Park to T-Town Reservation with the Briarcliff Peekskill Trailway. Bethany being a large piece in between those 2 points. Of course, I was, I'm a community person, so of course I was more than willing to talk about it. Something of that magnitude would not happen without most certainly county okay, and I can't imagine it superseding the town's okay. And at this point in time, we haven't heard very much about it since, so I don't foresee it happening anytime in the near future. Should the land trust and the town come back to us and request it again, of course, we will come to the zoning board or the planning board or the necessary entities that need to be and address the situation appropriately. But as of right now, I have no plans to be putting that up.
Yeah. Okay. And how many artists do you have in residence that live on site?
We don't have anybody who lives on site. Some of the local artists that come, they use studios on a daily basis, and they're Ossining, Croton town residents. So they just come during the day, and basically it's between 9 and 5. the residency programs that we have produced in the past, we are able to house up to 27 artists, again, temporarily. It's nobody's residence of living. They're there for, the most we've had somebody is 4 weeks. And it's the least we've had somebody is 1 week.
Yeah. And what is the breadth of the different arts that they have undertaken in their residencies? What are some of the different styles or types of art that they've explored?
We've had several individual residencies with professional dance companies, Bill T. Jones and Arnie Zane being one, and that was strictly dance. We produced a residency program last fall, Bethany's Fall 2019 residency, where we had writers, photographers, we had a lampshade maker from Vietnam, we had a banner maker from Brazil, we had, I'm trying to think of who else. Again, we had more dancers. We had some performance people from New York City who were working on plays and productions that were in the process of being made. So there was a lot of rehearsing. We have worked with Historic Hudson Valley and Stone Barns in helping them further their educational purposes. And that's more of just a very friendly relationship that we can each count on each other for. What are the other arts? We haven't had too much sculpture, although one of our daily residents does some sculpting. We have a photographer in. We have a lot of painters.
Writers.
What was that?
Writers.
Writers, we had
Writers,
some
playwrights, theater groups.
A puppeteer.
Puppeteer, right. We had
Music.
storytelling. We had, we hosted
Music.
New York State Folklore Society. Music from local people of Ted Daniels to the Cassatt Quartet. And we've opened it up to local, we had a I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, all-female artist concert last year. So it's really, when I talk about the arts personally, there's no limit to what the arts are. As when I talk about culinary arts, using food appropriately and artistically can be a magical experience. And if you, in today's world of, the sort of farm to table and a relationship with Blue Hill, you can see that they are all about the presentation and the art of the food. So really, I try and make the umbrella that covers the arts as large as possible.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Any other questions from my board members?
So I'll pick it up where I left off, if you don't mind.
It depends on, is John Hamilton still here?
No, it's all right. Not with John.
I'm still here.
And the dog in the background.
Okay, thanks, John. Go ahead.
He's still there. My question to the applicant is, one listens to the recitation of really righteous things that are being undertaken, and what is obviously community goodwill that is emanating from people who are truly creative. And the issue really, from my standpoint, is the fact that this activity is located in an R40 zone. That's no surprise to anybody. But I think the key to finding a center ground here is going to be you're identifying those exterior or outside uses which you feel are important to your mission, and putting forward a plan that is going to address the potential and the stated and real concerns of your neighbors. And they just listing good works here without talking about the neighborly or zoning aspects of those things. And we talked about it before when we talked about identifying the zoning envelope that we're talking about here. All those things weigh on this board's action in the future. And I don't think we can just throw up a lot of good intentions without dealing with the legalities. I personally feel that there are reasons to try to find a way to accommodate the changes or I should say the activities that you want to do, and still keep a peace among our neighbors. So you got to deal with those realities, and those are the realities that Sal, I think, is very ably presenting here. He's our chairman, and he's here to protect the community. But we had a very unique situation, and we got 27 acres stuck in the middle of an R40 zone. It's been used for years by a truly eleemosynary institution, the Catholic Church. And we need to deal now with a change in use, but potentially an upgrade or a good use, but something that is, because it's outside, is going to have an impact on the neighbors. And I hope that when you come back, you just sort of take that overview in your comments and not leave it to the board to try to kind of put words in your mouth.
I will.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I will also include how we can address the neighbors' concerns in the additional work that I will be presenting to the board. Is that okay?
Sure, I really appreciate it. Jim, very well said, thank you. We have Tom Wills, who's an alternate, and he may have to step in if someone is not in over the next couple of weeks or a month when we continue discussing this issue. Tom, you have any questions that you'd like to ask or comments?
No, I think the last speaker really got really close to the applicant's struggle, and I just want to strengthen that. I kept a tally of the notes that came to us, and thank you, Sandy, for sending them out. It's not unusual that we have, in essence, 22 positives and 24 negatives in this issue. And it would behoove the applicant to make a larger effort in detail so that we can make a decision. The 10 bullets are a nice start, but just as also a gardener, when I see that amount of garden, I know there's going to have to be sheds. What about water? What about a lot of things in the garden area just alone? And the artistic thing really needs to, Sal has made it very clear that the outside activities have really gotten the attention of the community. And I'm very sympathetic to what's going on here. I got my fine arts degree in Colorado in the 60s. I don't need to say anything more than that. So I'm very sympathetic, but I'm really going to ask the applicant to help this board make a really clear decision on behalf of the law and this very delicate community that you live right inside of.
I will do my best to be as detailed as possible.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. Are there any other questions from the board before we go out to the public?
Yeah, Sal, I just had one more kind of follow-up question.
Sure.
Kind of relates to the architect and the preparation of the more detailed site plan and looking at what areas go on what site plan. And the question is directed a little bit at John Hamilton. In the R40 district, there are height limitations on building structures and other types of things. are there applicable criteria for things, for example, like sculpture, if it's in close proximity to adjacent properties and things of that nature?
We would treat the sculptures as accessory structures, which would limit them to a height of 15 feet.
Thank you.
David, also, not this David, I'm sorry, David Lyons or JB. If either one of you wants to call me 9:30 tomorrow morning, we can go over a couple of things with the bees and things like that, okay?
I'll be calling you, sir. I should call the building department?
Yeah, give me a call about 9:30.
Okay.
Okay, since all of the board members have asked their questions, and again, Mr. Lyons, we have 7 days open for additional public input and additional answers to questions.
Chair, sorry, could I speak to that if you don't mind?
Sure.
So I think the applicant's gotten a lot of feedback tonight, and we haven't even really opened it up to the public yet. The way the public hearing was noticed was that there would be a written comment period of 7 days if the public hearing was closed. Another option that the board has that may be more beneficial under these circumstances is to adjourn the public hearing to a subsequent meeting so that the applicant may have a little bit more time to make a more thorough submission. And then it would give the public an opportunity to review that supplemental submission and provide public comment on that submission.
I only need a couple of days to get this stuff together for myself.
Okay.
I'm saying that if that helps or.
Okay, so what I'd like to do to the general public and those who want to say anything, remember, give me your name and address. If you've written in, we have it on file and it is going to be put on the web. If you have other comments and if your next door neighbor is the next one in line and has the same repetitive comments, I'd appreciate just one person giving their comments so that we can move on with this hearing. So I'll open it up now one at a time to the public if there's anybody that wants to give some comments.
So the mechanism for doing so is there's a raise your hand feature on the, I believe, on the the right-hand side of the screen under the list of participants. If you're dialing in on a phone, you can hit *9, and that's the equivalent of raising your hand.
Okay, so *9 if you called in. I did not see raising your hands. I see reactions, share screen, participants, stop video, and more.
You have to click on the participants, like she said, and then at the bottom of the participants pane is
okay, fine.
a raise hand option.
Right.
I believe Beth Cohen is raising her hand.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. You can hear me, Sandy?
Yes.
Good to see you. Thanks, everybody in board. Thank you for all your service. You guys put in a lot of time. I really appreciate it. David, when in doubt, reach out. It's quoted off of some of the information that you sent out to us. But we have cited multiple times where you have just, to me, run rough and hard and basically just done what you chose to want to do as opposed to just picking up the phone and calling the building department. So, I'm not even going to go into the list because most of them have been mentioned already. One that was neglected was me looking out my back door one evening and seeing the water tower, the town of Austin water tower, lit up with a projector for BAC for your Bethany Arts Center, like a second moon rising over my backyard. So my question to you is, when are you actually going to pick that phone up and become more proactive like the rest of the neighborhood, like I would do when I'm doing work in my home, when I pick up the phone and call Sandy and have to talk to Mr. Hamilton? Why haven't you done it, and when are you going to start doing that?
My apologies. I'm sorry that have disturbed you. That was not our point. Since our meeting last November, and most of this had come to light, and again, it was due to my ignorance, we have not done anything additionally without picking up the phone, mainly because due to COVID and waiting to get in front of the board. Our policy is, if in doubt, I will reach out to Mr. Hamilton. Up to this point, we haven't done anything additionally on the property since our last meeting in November.
Well, let us hope so. I guess that's all I can say there. If things are happening back there, it's a big property. Unless we see it, we don't know you're doing it. Okay, I know you're going to give us a lot more information. I'm visualizing a minimum of 50 children out there. That's a minimum. We haven't really, I'm sure you're going to address it more.
I believe I said it was a maximum.
What's that?
I believe I said it was a maximum.
For one camp, and you included one other of your bullet points in that camp, but other things were not included in that. So when you do address this, can we get a much better head count of maximum amount of people overall with all of your propositions?
Absolutely.
Because I'm envisioning 150 children out there.
I don't think it's that popular, but I understand what you're saying, and I will do my best to give as many details to the number of people as possible.
I mean, what happens when it rains?
We go inside.
Okay.
So why aren't you inside?
I'm sorry.
Pardon?
I didn't hear your second part of your question.
I thought I heard somebody else speaking. That's why. That was all. Okay. So they're going inside. You've answered that question. I guess going back to the original application you had, it was cited in a couple of different places that you were going to build a buffer zone so that the neighborhood would not have to have car headlights disturb us. And I'm sure if you walk your property now, you'll see the plantings that you've done for a buffer zone. Those trees are at least 15 feet apart. I didn't even pace it. I didn't measure it, so I might be off with my measurements. It will take, I would bet, 50 to 75 years before they're actually what I would consider a functional buffer zone. So I don't know if that's something that we can address in here, but it would really be nice to actually protect your neighbors from noise, headlights, even the lights that shine in the parking lots at night. They're pretty bright. I mean, I understand you need to have security, but they're pretty bright. So I kind of think I'd like you to sort of address in there the fact that there was never really a buffer zone built the first time, even though it was mentioned in an architect's letter, it was mentioned in your application. There are some sporadic trees on the property lines. I'm kind of requesting that. I don't know if you really need to even respond to that, to be honest with you. That's something.
I'd like to respond. As part of our original application, we had a site plan, and we did put down as many trees as we proposed. We tried to pick out trees that would not take 10 or 15 years, but yes, some of the trees is going to take time. I also tried to take into account the existing foliage that is present to help create a better buffer zone. We also, and again, it's going to take a couple of years to grow in, but we put around the perimeter of the parking lot smaller bushes that will need to grow to a couple of feet. They're probably about 2 feet right now. They were 1 foot last year, to the size where they will block majority of the lights coming from the headlights of Bethany. I invite anybody and everybody, the zoning board especially, to come to Bethany for a visit and take a look around, and so you can see exactly what is present and how we are doing things. As far as the lights in the parking lot, we went with the board's 2,700 luminaries, I believe, maybe 3,000, whatever their recommendation was, we went with. We tried to position them to create as the least amount of light pollution going towards the neighbors as possible, but we do have to take into consideration the safety of our people who are coming by.
You know, I understand that. I know that there, matter of fact, I think last winter, the winter before that, you had somebody coming in and doing donuts in your beautiful field.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was
that was a shame, and my heart went out to you for that, because by the time we ran out there to try and see what was going on, that person was long gone every time they did it. But all right.
damage.
Yeah. All right. And then I guess the one thing, and I'll finish with this. I know there's a lot of people, and it'll start to get late, and this probably will not be the last conversation we all have, I'm hoping. So the next, I was just surprised your response to the film crew with the Into the Night, the whole thing, which was really very disturbing to at least I would say 3 of the people that this thing backed up against, because the tractor trailer basically was almost in our backyard. I was just surprised by your response when you said, well, I don't know exactly how you phrased it, but you were looking at that as the way to pay your bills there. And I'm just wondering, when you propositioned this place and you're a businessman and putting things together, how did you expect you were going to pay your bills?
We were hoping to do it through a lot of donations, through grants, membership fees. There are some fees that be paid for people who rent out our space, the parking lot being one of them. Again, I apologize for having the trucks on. They were done and out of there by 11 o'clock. I know that they parked in the street. Unfortunately, I had nothing to do with that. We're talking about the previous time when the permits were in place. They were there all night, and I do agree with that. But permits were in place for that first event. It was the second event that I did not have a permit for, and they were done by 11 o'clock at that particular time. Again, they were out on the street, which I specifically gave them permission to use the parking lot so that wouldn't happen. I unfortunately cannot control their actions to that extent. And again, it won't be going on unless I speak to the town and have permits and everything.
Right. Well, there's the crux of the issue. You have no control over what's going on back there. And that's what I'm afraid with this proposal of what you're...
It was not on the property, it was out on the street. There was complaints that some of the trailers were parked out on 133.
No, they were on your property. We have videos of them on your property idling very loudly. I have pictures. I got the whole thing was lit up. You had tents back there. There was it was like a show.
That was the first time, and that's the time that we had the permit. The second time it was much less so. They were only there for a day. And yes, the idling noise, I became aware of certain idling laws. And again, if that were to happen in the future, I've learned from my mistakes, and they won't happen again.
I really just don't choose to have to police my neighbor's backyard.
All right, and let me just say 2 things here. Number one is that, we have close to 52 participants listening in. Some are, a majority of them live in and around the area. Is that, policing is only as good as the people that call in. If you go back to originally when we started this at 7:30, 2 years they had an outdoor camp, and we did not get a complaint about it, even though it was illegal to do. So if there's anything going on at the site, people have to call. John, is not able to go through the complete town of Ossining every hour of every day. So you have to do your own policing. So that's number one. Number two, John, I'm asking, because Mr. Lyons has said it 3 or 4 times already, is that who gave him a permit for the parking lot for them to do basically a lay down yard there? Was it through the building department? Was it through the planning department? Was it through the board? Do you know anything about that?
David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we found out and we spoke, you said the town of Newcastle gave you a permit. Was that, am I correct?
No. So there's a little confusion going on. This was Ray Donovan, which was a Showtime TV series. We had them there twice. The first time they had permits from the town.
The town of Ossining?
Yes.
From whom?
I'd have to pull up my records.
John, do you know about, would you be giving those permits out?
No, I wouldn't, but David, I might be wrong, but I could have sworn you said to me that the town of Newcastle gave them the permits and then they came to you to park in your lot.
If allow me to finish. So that was the first time. The second time, they were since they were filming down at Bailey Farms, they had the filming from the town of Newcastle I was only letting them use the parking lot. There was no filming, there was no, other than them using the parking lot to park their trucks, there was no other filming or any acting type of activities. So I unfortunately just took their word for it that this was okay. And again, as I said last time, I apologize. It won't happen again. It hasn't happened since. This is a learning curve for me as well. I am a businessman, as Beth pointed out. Doing not-for-profit work is something new, and I'm doing the best I can to get up to speed and dealing with the certain situations such as the zoning board and the planning boards. As you can see from my questions earlier, I am somewhat confused about who I should talk to about what, but I'll figure it all out.
And we're here to help you, but you have to understand something like Ann basically said, that you own the property. You are fully responsible for what goes on that site. Whether it's Camp O, okay, that you rent out the site or whatever you do with them, okay, you are responsible. I have to, being a businessman myself, I'm sure you have to be completely insured and added onto their insurance because you are responsible.
Yes.
So you can't say, I didn't know and I just let it out there and I thought.
We had all of their...
All right, let's go on to somebody else. Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Thank you, Ann.
Chairman, Mark S. has his hand up.
Okay.
Mark S.
Hi, Mark Schultz, 14 Tavana Road. I've had some conversations with Mr. Lyons that have been, in some cases productive. I sent in a letter, but specifically addressing the issue of setbacks, which you brought up, Chairman, briefly in your comments. I just asked that perhaps you instruct our architect to come to you with a plan that provides for that 100-foot setback that you mentioned in all of the proposed facilities that he's including, the sculptures, all of their facilities, because the original plan documents show, they're not specifically called out, but the hatched areas are sitting probably 30 feet at the most at most, probably less than that, from the property lines of the neighbors as they were originally drawn up. And that, I think that would be a good starting point in terms of facilities and their impact on the neighbors.
So that Mark, I have, and after tomorrow, I will be sending a list to Sandy of some of the letters that came in with numerous questions that we will send out to the applicant so that we get written answers on. There were just too many to try to discuss this evening, but they will be going out to Sandy, and it's all in there. Thank you.
I understand my letter is considerably more detailed than this comment, but it would probably be would maybe help in us not going through a whole nother lap through this.
Yep.
If they just started with that as kind of the default with.
You're not the only one that sent in a couple of pages.
Right. And so again, we're not, as we said in the letter, we're not fundamentally opposed to the mission of the place at all. It just, like a number of your board has said, you're in a residential neighborhood, and some comments from the architect and the attorney talk about how neighbors are closer, and they're fundamentally misunderstanding the heightened requirements on a non-conforming or special use. The setbacks for me, for my neighborhoods, are like 20-foot side yards. The setbacks for special uses are 100 feet. And so pointing to how houses are close to each other is irrelevant to this discussion. I'm glad to hear that. I didn't even know that what they were doing before was not legal. The outdoor, I really didn't look into it until this part of this process. They were mostly, from my point of view, I'm farther down, they were mostly okay. The only exception was when they had the Harry Potter camp and they were running, moderate to loud minor key music all day for a week. That got a little bit disturbing after a while. But I've talked with David, and they're willing to work with us on maybe not maybe being a little more sensitive on that subject. But, specific details and specific constraints on those kinds of things, particularly it certainly wasn't any louder than a lawnmower, but a lawnmower is like 20 minutes or half an hour. It's not all day, every day for a week.
Thank you, Mark.
That's kind of a quick synopsis of what I had to say. Thank you for the opportunity to
Thank you.
be heard.
Next, we have Ann Merla, has her hand up.
Hi, how are you? Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Ann. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
Good to see you, hon. I haven't seen you in a while.
You too.
And I don't want
We
to
don't
say
see you,
here. I see you once in a while. How are you?
Good.
I have to be honest, I'm not a big kid fan. And so I'm going to put that out there. I am not adverse to them having camps, running maybe a few weeks. I'm not at all outdoors. I can live with that. Constant outdoor activity would probably really irritate me. And I find solace in my quiet in my backyard. But I would like for them to succeed and to find a mutual agreement. I don't want them to fail. I don't want to be a bad neighbor. I think that a lot of things that they could do are very commendable. But I worry about a full-time outdoor summer camp with 50 kids. That would really kind of disrupt me, because I am home all the time and I'm working from home and I work out on my porch. And it's, just the noise and it's not, anything they're doing wrong. They're kids, kids will be kids and they're enjoying themselves and they're going to make noise. And that's understandable, but I worry about that. As far as, the other things, the bees, I'm 100% behind them having the bees there. I hope they get the permit. I hope that it happens. I hope they have a garden. I'm not, opposing that at all. I want to be a good neighbor. I just don't want to spend my whole summer listening to 50 kids. So if there could be indoor activities with some outdoor activities, that's fine. They had the camp, which was the Harry Potter thing, and I shut my windows and, it was just kids having fun. You can't control that. That's just kids. Nothing wrong with it. I don't mind it on an occasional basis. I just don't want it every day, like for 8 hours a day. So that's
And
my
understand
feeling.
something is that, this is not just for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Tuesday and Thursday. This is 5 to 6 days a week. So I understand what you're saying. And if you haven't put it in writing, you should put it in writing so we keep it on record. But you basically saying you like the idea, but you don't like the idea. This zoning variance is going to be,
I am fine with an occasional camp week. that they have outdoors, that's okay. But I don't want a permanent outdoor camp that runs 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 with 60 kids or 50 kids. That was my problem with it.
Okay,
Because
so, Mr. Lyons, when you write in, would you tell us with regards to the summer camp and the show camp and Camp O, how many days a week, the hours, and the number of participants do you anticipate?
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, I want them to survive, and I want us to survive, and I want to coexist. I don't want to cause any animosity. Maybe, we can make this work, for everybody to be peaceful.
Yeah.
I will definitely include some more details, and just to let you know that the camps will be inside and outside. It was never intention just to have it outside. We have so much space to use inside. We utilize it as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Lyons.
you.
Next.
Thank you.
Sal?
The next speaker.
Sal?
Yes.
Excuse me, but I think our policy is for speakers to identify themselves by name and address.
Yes.
Oh,
The names are coming up.
Ann, do you want me to say it? I'm Ann Merla, 21 Stonegate Road, Ossining, New York.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker with their hand up is Mary Beth Stasser. Mary Beth?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to let my husband, Angelo Picarillo, speak.
Okay. Your address?
Oh, 29 Stonegate Road.
So we're 29 Stonegate, and we've been residents for 26 years. I think I agree with a lot of the things that our fellow residents have said. So I don't want to repeat what it's already been said. One thing that does concern me is that if some of these activities that have already occurred, that have occurred outside of the original permit, the special permit that was given for indoor activity, how can we be assured that more, and for lack of a better word, abuse of the permit is not going to take place if we are ever to consider any of these items? That's a big concern for me. Who's going to monitor that? Because frankly, like Mark said, we had activity outside, really from our backyard. We could see from our deck. And we had no idea that they weren't allowed to do that. We just said, oh, okay, that's Bethany. And, and I'm an educator. I've been at Ossining High School for 25 years. Now I am a kids person, but I think at the same time, we have to respect the quality of life of our residents. And I'm very proud to live where I live. And I don't want to jeopardize that. And I think that everyone has to be transparent and has to abide by what they're allowed to do. And frankly, sir, some of the things that you have done is retroactive. You've done it first, and now you're asking for permission to do it. And that's not how it should be done.
Number one, I agree with you. Number two is that the letter that you both sent in was very thorough, and I appreciate that. And that also is going to be sent to the applicant to answer on a one-to-one basis. I'll go back to my prior comments, is that when in doubt, make a call. For people that did not call for 2 years while all this outdoor activity was going on, I don't like to place blame, but, it is what it is. They were there for 2 years and it was illegal. And we've had 100 I'm sorries. Two wrongs don't make a right in what I always live by. But, the building inspector is the enforcer. And like I said before, he can't be every place, every time. And you go, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if you don't know what's going on and you have a problem, you either call the building department or you call the police and you go from there. Knowing what has gone on at the site, I will be anal about this with regards to the building inspector to make sure no matter, what we vote on, it's going to have to be, a daily stop to see what's going on there during the course of the year and especially in the summer because of the past experiences that we've had. And that was one of the reasons why that we did not renew this special permit for numerous years. We have a right as the board to do any number of years that we want. And we renewed the last one because of some of the input that we got and what we heard, via rumors, even though we had no official complaints, is that we did it for 3 years. And I think we're going to be sticking with that for a while, depending on, what this board is going to approve or disapprove.
Can I ask 2 questions in follow-up, please?
Sure.
One question is, what is allowed currently for outdoor use on their property in regards the trail does extend beyond our house, down past our property line. Are they allowed to use that currently? I do see people out there moving logs, moving trees. Is that allowed currently? If not, I will call tomorrow and file a complaint. Otherwise, we don't necessarily know what's allowed currently because we did not know that they were not allowed to have large groups of children congregate in the backwoods behind our house. But now I do, and I will definitely call. Are they allowed to be working back there currently?
Okay, so number one is that Mr. Hamilton, he could get your email address and send you what is allowed in an R40 zone, okay? And number two, he could send you a copy of what is allowed via a special permit in an R40 zone. So, and it's there's pages of it, so I can't go down every page. But yes, I would agree that you call John tomorrow and tell him what's going on at the site because I have no idea. I was there twice last week. I didn't see anything going on. I've been paying a lot more attention for the past month or so by just passing by. But, John's the person to call. But, you should be able, or you could, Sandy could send you a copy of the zoning code, and it's specific. It tells you what's allowed in an R40 zone, and it tells you what's allowed as a special permit for the arts and philanthropic in an R40 zone.
Okay.
Well, maybe I can answer
this
that.
week, just a few weeks ago, there were workers back there. So.
Well, maybe I can answer this. Right now, I looked at the site plan today before we got here. And the area that you're talking about, that trail, that's a meditation trail. It's meant for people to walk around. There's some benches there to just meditate and relax. If there are workers back there, well, that's understandable if some work is being done on the property. If there's a landscaper there or something like that, I could certainly understand that. If there's something other than that, you can certainly talk to us. But right now, the activity permitted there is a meditation walking trail.
Okay, thank you.
The second question is, since you know that he violated his permit, were there fines that were given to him that he needed to respond to and pay?
Well, am I on mute?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't talk. Okay. Unfortunately, no one called us. We knew nothing about anything going on, so everything that we have is hearsay. I cannot issue any summonses on hearsay information. If somebody calls and we go up there and see something, we would probably issue a court appearance ticket, which carries a fine of up to $5,000 for each ticket we issue.
Okay.
But again, we were never called on anything.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. As I said, I did not know that they were violating their permit, and had I would have called. I work from home. I've been working from home for 6 years. My husband works in Ossining School District, so we're local people, and we do appreciate where we live, and we're community people. Do you have anything to say?
No, I think that, we all should try to be good neighbors to each other. And I think we have this situation. And I think that, as many people have said, we all have Ossining in the town of Ossining in our best interest.
I can add, and I did put it in the letter that we wrote, that from the experience from the last 2 summers, I do not know how many children were present, but there were large groups of children, maybe not 50, but from what I could see out my window and from my deck and the volume of the noise, just from that number that was present was definitely disruptive for the neighborhood. That they congregated in the back, they stopped in the trail, they were doing whatever activities they were doing, and at that number of students, it was definitely loud. It was kind of disturbing for the normal neighborhood single residents that we have in our neighborhood. So.
And again, for those 2 years, we received 0 complaints.
I understand that.
Thank you.
Yes. And for those 2 years, David Lyons violated his permit.
Do noted. Thank you. And the questions you sent in will be answered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Our
Sandy?
next speaker is Donna Sharrett.
Hi, Donna Sharrett, 84 Morningside Drive. I have a couple comments. One is the open trail system. I just wanted, for the record, people to know that the Environmental Advisory Committee for the town of Ossining worked really hard on that, and it did, definitely a piece of that is the Bethany property. They were working on it before it was Bethany, so just to clarify that. I have some concerns because when this first was approved, there was an environmental review, and when you introduce living things like bees and community gardens and all that, I think there should be an overlay of review regarding the environmental aspects. So with the community gardens, I designed the community garden for the town of Ossining, so I have a little bit of experience with them. Where you're locating them, when I look at the GIS, it looks like there's a lot of trees there. So you say that you're not going to take any trees down.
Can I just answer that real quick? That it's bramble. It's a low 2, 3, 4 foot bramble, a lot of vines. As I understand it, I believe the sisters had a vineyard back there. So some of the trees have been completely overgrown by the vines. So what you're seeing is really, it's brambly green versus trees. And again, I invite everybody and anybody to actually come and take a look so you can see what the ground view is of the upper.
Right, okay, that's good. So also, I know that there's this stream on your property and then wetlands. So on the site plan, I think that should also be noted on as to where the buffers are, because community garden, from my experience, it was the organic community garden, and I'd go in there and somebody be putting stuff in that had the little blue stuff in it, the Miracle-Gro and all this other stuff, then they would say, well, it says natural on it, and they'd be using stuff. So all of those things would be impacts to a wetland area.
Absolutely. And we would, because I would try and keep it as organic.
Well, that's what I did, and I'm going to tell you, it's a really hard, it's hard. It's hard. When you're not there, something's going to happen, let me tell you, from my experience. So I think that, there should also, it would be, I defer to John Hamilton as to what is allowed in a wetland buffer and a wetland, but if it was on the site plan when you're presenting this additional information, I think that would be useful.
I shall.
So that's the stream, the wetland, and the buffers. And if there's any trees.
Again, I was.
There's not, okay. So the other thing I would like to say is that with the bees, there's 300 species of native bees in this area. So if it gets to the point where you're going to apply for a permit for bees, and certainly if they go to change the law, I will definitely speak up on this. Anybody that's adding, and I think the beehives have 10,000 some bees in them. There's a lot of bees, and honeybees, they're non-native honeybees. That does impact the native bee population. So it'd be really great if there would be beehives and a food supply at the same time. Like, so a pollinator garden that's full season to feed those bees so they're not impacting the native bee population, which exists here. So that's my comment about the bees. And and I have no problem with either the bees or the community garden, as long as they're being looked at as living objects and not just little squares on a site plan. Also with if it gets to the point with the bees, I think that it would be important to know how many was going to be added, and also the size of the community garden, and if there was going to be structures and all, and where it's located with regard to the environmental.
I hope to provide details for us.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
The next speaker that has their hand up is Nancy. I don't see a last name, just Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy Kovar. I live at 9 Stonegate Road. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband, Wade. I have to tell you, listening to this meeting and hearing the number of violations of the special use permit is extremely concerning, because every time there was a question about it, there was a response that I didn't understand or I wasn't aware that you could not do that particular use of the property. That's very concerning to me, because I understand that the permit was pretty express as to what could and could not be done. To have a board member of the Bethany Arts holding the Theater O out there on the property, running that camp in violation of the permit is concerning. And I echo what Mr. Picarillo said. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
That's okay.
Okay. I'm going to call you Mr. P. Mr. P and his wife stated, it's like it causes concern and a lack of trust if you're violating a special use permit. I did not object when they applied for the initial permit, because having indoor use of that property did not cause me concern. It's a very quiet piece of property. I've lived here 22 years. I love my backyard. I love my deck. It's a very quiet area, but also the composition of the area. I don't know what it is, because we have hills and valleys, but noises get amplified. And I would hear stuff from Bethany Arms on my property on Stonegate Road. It seems to float across the air. I don't know why. I'm not an engineer or why that happens, but it definitely gets amplified. I'm a parent. I love children, but 50 children running around outside would definitely change the ambiance of this neighborhood. And one of the reasons my husband and I selected this neighborhood was precisely because of the zoning and the lack of outdoor activity. We particularly looked for a lot that didn't have an outside venue, that had spacing between the houses, that was quiet, and although not rural, it is not densely populated. And that's a character that we do not want to lose. We have no objection to having indoor activities at the Bethany Arms. We haven't been disturbed by indoor activities since they've been there. Another concern that I have is parking. I wasn't aware of what parking was on site until I saw the aerial that was presented by your architect. But I can tell you, when activities occur in and around Stonegate Road, if they're on 133, there is no parking for the residents. They park on Stonegate Road and Cooper Drive. Now, that's only a few cars because they're house parties. So my concern would be your art festival that you have in October. How many people are you expecting, and where are they parking? Because that would definitely change the composition of this area. Arts are a wonderful thing, and they're enriching. And if you keep it inside, my husband and I do not have any objection. Taking it outside changes the entire composition of this area and the ambiance and the reasons why the homeowners that surround this area, which was passive, and when the nuns lived there, you didn't hear a peep. Sitting out on your deck and listening to the birds is the reason we bought here. And I commend the ZBA for taking a very hard look at this, and Mr. Hamilton for the work he does in enforcing the zoning laws. But I can't stress that the ambiance and noise and traffic and school buses trying to make the turn from 133 into those lovely stone pillars at the driveway, I think is going to be a problem. And that's my comment. We'll also put some more in writing. I don't want to take any more of your time, but I thank you for the opportunity to speak here this evening.
Nancy, thank you. And if you haven't written in, I'd really appreciate that in writing sent to me.
I will do that.
Thank you. Okay, Sandy, next.
Next speaker is Eric Garrity.
Hello. I would just like to say that the nuns don't live there anymore, and someone is going to. So, in my opinion, the Bethany Arts community is the highest and best use of this space. They maintain all of this open space with an orchard, beehives, camp activity. There is unlikely going to be any other entity that would inhabit that beautiful landscape and offer what Bethany Arts provides to our town. So if we come down on them like we have tonight, without any appreciation for what they have contributed to our community, what else would be there? We talk about the quality of life. If Bethany Arts cannot sustain themselves on that property, then some developer will take it over and build out the maximum density possible. So if what we're talking about is working with David Lyons to create some added buffer zones, a few nights a year, that there might be additional noise or activity, like who else is going to invest themselves into this property and collaborate with all of these local artists and organizations to the extent that they have? I think we're doing Bethany Arts community a disservice for being so negative in this hearing. And clearly, mistakes have been made. We can work with Bethany Arts and bring them into compliance and work towards doing better, vibrant activities that meet the needs of the community as well as Bethany Arts. And I don't think that it's going to be an issue to allow them to exist the way that they intend and continue to be a part of this community.
Mr. Garrity, would you mind identifying where you live?
57 Prospect Avenue.
Mr. Garrity, when you talk about highest and best use, now you're talking to my livelihood, because I've been a real estate broker for 50 years. I've been on this zoning board for 35 years. And when you say that, we're coming down on the applicant, the bottom line is the following. It's an R40 zone. And if someone came along and wanted to build, they're allowed to because it's an R40 zone. I'm not saying anything against the arts, but we have zoning rules and regulations that we have to follow. And I'm sure, your wife, being the mayor of the village of Ossining, understands she just can't give a nod and an okay for, a non-usable use in, any type of viable project in the village of Ossining. They have to go to the zoning board of appeals and or the planning department. And this is so, let me finish, please. And this is the same thing here. There are rules, regulations, and zoning that we followed in giving a special permit to BAC. And now he's changing that completely. And that's why we have our zoning rules to follow. And that's what we intend to do.
Sir, understood, absolutely. It's just the level of animosity towards this organization right now, I feel is going to prevent them from continuing their interest in providing Ossining with this incredible art space. And, I think that they're an organization that is willing to atone for their mistakes and interested in working with the zoning board to make sure that they are in compliance in the future and working, continuing to work with Ossining to provide all this great programming.
And that's why we're having this hearing. And that's why there are 5 members on the board that will take a vote with regards to any and all of the applicant's requests to do something that basically is not allowed in an R40 special permit area. Everything that he wants to do is laudable. It's absolutely fantastic. But maybe it can't be done in an R40 zone, and you have to go someplace else to do it. And the people that have written in, and it's 50-50, and some of the people that wrote in, this is for their own good because they work there, or they own Camp O, or they live in Dobbs Ferry and they come up there and do their paintings, and that's all wonderful. We have the guidelines of our zoning rules and regulations, and that's what we have to bring to the public's awareness and also to the applicant. So there's nobody here other than giving information out so that we all can take it all in. We have our zoning code to follow, and that's what we intend to do. But every use of that site is fantastic. But who says it has to be there?
Understood, sir. I would just hate to see all that open space become a massive residential development because places like Bethany Arts could not exist.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Sandy?
Next speaker is Robert Melstein.
Hello, thank you. Robert Melstein, 25 Stonegate Road, just up the block and down the block from a couple of the other speakers. I'll just add here that I agree that my wife and I have been here 10 years, and we agree that we would like to see Bethany and its mission succeed. The only thing I would add to the previous comments is that in the refiling of paperwork and additional information that BAC will be submitting to the planning board, I'd like to get a better understanding whether through the architectural specs or in the narrative, what, if anything else, they are planning for in the areas that abuts our property and the other ones on the from about 21 to 29. I was not able to glean that from the current presentation. So there is this meditation walkway and trailway area. And again, what I'm trying to understand is what would change for those areas which are currently being used as such. So I would just ask that please in the revised paperwork in the planning to get a really better understanding of what would be going on in the areas around the property.
Okay, thank you.
I have a resident, it's just the letter C.
Hey, Sandy, Karen Fendrick, how are you?
I need your name and address.
Yes, can you hear me?
And your address?
Can you hear me?
We can't hear you that well.
Hold on a second. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Sandy, it's Karen Fendrick.
Oh, hi, Karen.
How are you? So
Good.
I wrote a letter, so I know Sal has it, and thank you so much for getting back to me so quickly with the receipt. I just wanted to add 2 things. So my name is Karen Fendrick. I own 19 Stonegate Road. My mother is currently living there. I live at 23 Apple Lane in Briarcliff currently. I've lived in Ossining and Briarcliff all my life. So this is actually something that I feel very passionately about. I want everyone to know on the call that I actually feel that the BAC is something that is important, right? So I do agree with Eric that we want to make this work. So these comments are meant to be a collaboration, right? It's not meant to be something that's coming down on the BAC. But I want to make 2 points that I think, one, as I've been listening, I had additional thought from my letter. And 2, I want to make sure that we really focus on traffic, right? So everything that everyone has said, I agree with. Noise, kids, the whole thing. The fact of the matter is that I'm not sure 133 can manage what we're looking at, right? 50 kids, 50 additional cars, buses. We have a very dangerous intersection down on 133 and 9A. There's accidents there. I don't know what the data is, but I'm sure if you did a traffic study, adding this additional cars, for after school programs and for camps would be an issue. So I don't want people to ignore that. I would hope that the BAC would do a traffic study to prove to the community that that would not be a safety issue. Making a left out of Cooper, Stonegate, Ganong, all the roads along the way is already dangerous, right? So adding this additional volume would be a big deal. The other thing I just want to comment on is the notion that the residents have to police themselves, right? That after 2 years of, violation of the permit, the residents didn't make phone calls, so that we suddenly are now in a position where we're at fault and not the BAC. So Sal, I know that what you're saying is you didn't get complaints, so you didn't know about it, but I don't think any of us knew that they were doing anything that was against the permit. So I actually take offense to that statement. I actually think it's up to the owner to do the right thing by the community, not for the community to police themselves or their neighbors. I just want to put that on the record. Otherwise, like I said in my opening statement, I want this to work. I think I agree with Eric. I'd rather have BAC there than, a whole new development of homes. So I just hope that whatever we do, we can get to it, that it's a mutual collaboration of the right thing. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Michelle Concha Herco.
Hi, yes, my name is Michelle Herco. This is my husband, Ed Herco. We live at 23 Ryder Road, also a very busy street on a pitch with crazy people going up and down it. So we understand what that's all about. I wanted to say that I am an artist in this community. I have worked with Westchester Collaborative Theater. For the last 3 years, have produced the Ossining Jazz Festival with Ted Daniel. One of those wonderful years, we actually got the opportunity to perform at Bethany Arts Community. They gave us a home for our children's indoor programming, which was Jazz for Children, and it was in a collaboration with the school system. I also produce theater, and my husband also is in the community with arts and has also benefited from Bethany Arts Community. As artists, we need, love, and thrive on space. We need it to create, to collaborate, to bring beauty into the world. And sometimes that collaboration happens inside, and sometimes that collaboration happens outside. Because as a professional dancer myself and working with the Isadora Duncan Dance Company, I performed primarily outside in woods, bringing an audience into an outdoor space. I hope that we don't lose Bethany, and that is the main thing that I am advocating for here. I do not butt up against the property. I live around the corner from it. I understand the concerns of the residents, and I hope that there can be an amicable solution to all these concerns. For me, it would be really sad as an artist to lose Bethany because they can't give us everything that we artists are constantly thriving for. So that's my piece. Thank you. And I think Ed has something to say.
Yeah, so Ed Herco, I've been a resident of Ossining for about 2/3 of my life. I was a graduate of Ossining High School, went through the Ossining School District. Some people might know my father, Ed Herco Sr., who is the middle school band director. Needless to say, as a musician, I've played at Westchester Symphonic Winds down in Terrytown. And what I hope the board and the community residents will appreciate is really the good that BAC and David Lyons is bringing to Ossining. You can't count on one hand the number of, it's very rare in a town to have a arts community or a major area that you can have arts. There are a few of them in the county, and it's actually quite special that David wanted to bring an arts community to Ossining. I think it's awesome, and the fact that it's involving kids, and there's so much growth from that.
Big kids too.
Big kids too. I mean, our Westchester Symphonic Winds, we had a rehearsal inside there. It was a wonderful experience, and the diversity of arts. If you haven't checked out what they're doing, I'd encourage you to do so, because I think the vision is wonderful. And I forget the gentleman who made the comment of this earlier, but if BAC does fail, the amount of workers, and I don't think it'll be just maintenance, that will be inconveniencing the sound of the area and the traffic. And oh, by the way, it's going to be unbelievable because it will be a developer. Okay, and you have to think about that. Maybe another condominium complex, and maybe it's already zoned in order to do that, but do we really need another one? And, you know, I think we really ought to think about the things that will help our community and how unique and special it is to have an arts community right in Ossining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Bradley Morrison.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bradley Morrison. I live at 27 Ferris Place in the Village. And as somebody mentioned earlier, I work for the schools. I'm the Director of Cultural Arts for the Ossining School District, although I'm here speaking personally on my own behalf. And what I would like to say is that through my role in the school, as well as through a number of different arts organizations and activities that I'm involved with in the community, I've had firsthand opportunity to experience and witness the artistic activities taking place there. And most of those that were questioned about whether or not they're artistic or not. And so for the sake of grandstanding a little bit, I am the immediate past president of the Westchester County Arts Leadership Association. I'm the immediate past president of the New York State Band Directors Association. I've served on the New York State Blue Ribbon Commission for the Arts for the New York State Education Department. And I would like to think that I'm fairly qualified at determining what is or what is not artistic. And I would like to say that everything that I have seen taking place, now I didn't see film crews parked in the lot, but all of the artistic activities that I have seen taking place at Bethany's arts community have been of the highest caliber of the arts, particularly those that have been offered to students. And when we talk about the philanthropic nature, as David mentioned, he said it sort of as an aside, when they offered after-school programs indoors for dance and music, they called me at the schools and asked, and I said, well, can you give some kids some scholarships? And they said, sure, how many? And I said, 36 out of 40. And they gave 36 out of 40 kids scholarships to attend fantastically outstanding dance and music programs with some really amazing artists that we had here. They have, David himself, as well as the other artists in the community, have wonderful connections that provide absolutely invaluable benefits to our community and to our children in our community especially, and anything that we can do to help support and advocate for their programs taking place is absolutely necessary. I agree with everything that Eric Garrity said previously, so I won't repeat those. But I also would just like to note that one of our neighbors here made the comment that I like your arts as long as you keep them inside. And I would just say that as an artist, I find that statement to be a bit off-putting. The arts require an audience, but they also require the ability to be as expressive as possible. And that does not always allow itself to be contained within a box or in a building. And so with that, I thank everyone.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Ruth Reagan.
Hi, my name is Ruth Reagan. I live at 61 Sunset Drive. I submitted a letter, and I'm not going to repeat what I set forth in the letter, but my property also borders with the current Maryknoll property, so I am aware that any issues that the neighbors on Tavano are facing are something that I could face in the future. I'm not an artist, I'm an audience member, and I'm a parent. But the thing that I want to speak to is some of the callers that I heard who had some concerns about camp. And I think the important thing to understand is that this is not a traditional camp. My children attended camp last summer. They attended for 1 week. The remainder of the summer, they attended a traditional camp, sports, swimming, tennis. But for this 1 week, they had the opportunity to experience art, both inside and outside. And it's a totally different experience. And so people also talked about that they had, that they're concerned about being 50 kids. There definitely weren't 50 kids the week that my children attended camp. I believe there were, I think, much closer to 30. And another difference is it's a shorter day. People are talking about, I don't want kids being there for 8 or 9 hours a day. I think it was 6 hours. I think something like 9 to 3. So when people think about camp, I think they're thinking about traditional day camps. And what I want them to understand, and I don't have the art words to explain it, is that it's not a traditional camp. And my recommendation would be, to speak to my children. I'm happy to have them talk to you. It's not the same thing. And sure, there may be noise, but they were indoors and outside. But there's a benefit to something that's arts-based at camp rather than the traditional camp. And that's really the point that I wanted to make beyond the letter that I submitted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Henry Welt. Henry Welt?
Yep.
Oh.
I'm here. I just took me a minute to unmute and do all that stuff. So my name is Henry Welt. I live at 2 Oak Hill Terrace in the village of Ossining. I'm not a neighbor in a strict sense of BAC. I also have no official connection with BAC except as a resident who's come to enjoy going there and participating in the events that that I've been privileged to attend at BAC. And I guess my remarks, I don't want to be repetitive of what Eric or Bradley or the Hercos said, although I endorse and support virtually every sentiment in those 3 statements. I did submit a letter, and what I'm going to say is really directed at and is a request to the zoning board, to the appeals board. I'm, by your standards, relatively new to Ossining. I'm here only 7 years. I've never attended a meeting of the zoning board in that 7-year period until tonight. If I parachuted in from Mars, I would think that the tone of the earlier part of this meeting was so punitive that I would be worried about what kinds of activities were conducted on this property that had gotten everyone not only so upset, but so interested in finding out how we can punish people for past violations of rules which should have been adhered to. And one can easily find ways to ensure that they're adhered to in the future. But this notion about, how much can we fine them and what can we do? And what can we do to really just punish, I don't know any other word, for what may have gone on in the past, I think is really unfortunate. From my perspective, I was the first chair of the Ossining Village of Ossining arts committee, and I have an interest in the arts generally. I think that BAC has the potential for becoming part of what Ossining is in the next 50 years, or whatever period of time you want to choose going forward. BAC represents part of the future of what this village can stand for. It's about inclusivity. It's not just about art. It's not simply about art. It would be enough if it were just about art. But it's about bringing community together, about creating community. It's about opening people's access to one another. It's about creating understanding and empathy amongst people. All of that goes on in that structure, and in the yard and in the beautiful grounds surrounding it. And as I understand it, the role of zoning generally is to shape a community. It's to help decide what a community geographically should look like. The zoning rules are not intended to be a wall that people hide behind when they want to punish someone. The zoning rules are varied all the time. If we wanted to bring a major commercial entity to Ossining to improve its economic future or provide any benefit to the community at large, people would be begging that entity to come, and people would be modifying zoning rules so that the greater community could get the benefits that were envisioned by bringing that entity to Ossining. Here we have someone who completely on his own and completely altruistically, this is not a for-profit entity. There are no bad motivations here. Maybe people did the wrong thing by not obeying and adhering to certain rules, but there are no villains here. There's no one that's bilking the community. There's no one that's taking advantage or abusing of anything. And the tone of the conversation that I've been hearing for the last 2 hours would speak to someone that had done something awful. I mean, really. If you have a recording of this thing, play it back, listening to it. It sounds like we're talking about a place where just really unfortunate activities had been taking place, and now we're out to figure out how to drive these people out of town. It's not supposed to be what we're doing. And I have complete respect for the rights of the property owners that abut the property, and I think that their legitimate concerns 100% ought to be taken into account, and I think that the rules ought to be enforced. But you ought to go down as a zoning board as people that were instrumental in bringing BAC to Ossining, keeping it here and helping it thrive, rather than being the instrument that put it out of business.
Thank you.
Howard Fleischer is next.
Sal, can I answer that a minute, please?
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to set the record straight here. Mr. Lyons, each time that you had something where you made a mistake, have you received anything other than conversations with the building department? Have you received anything punitive in the nature of violations or court appearance tickets or anything?
No, not at all.
No, actually, the town's been I thought very cooperative with you.
The building has been amazing.
I'm a little disappointed when I hear somebody say that we're trying to be very punitive here. We're asking honest, simple questions that have to be answered as part of the zoning process. And to insinuate that we are trying to, quote, I guess, come after you, when we have dealt with you for a couple of years and you have made some mistakes, and each time we spoke with you. You weren't taken to court, you weren't issued a violation notice. And I think it's important that people understand that we are working with you and you have received nothing in punitive ways from the town.
So I'm Mr. Hamilton, I'm sorry if you took it as insinuating anything about your activities or the town's activities.
Well, that's what you basically said. I mean,
No,
that's what you basically said.
Excuse me. That's not at all what I said, and I just apologized if it came out as directed at Mr. Hamilton or the department or his functions. What I was speaking about were the comments from people generally in the earlier part of this meeting. And if you want to hear what I was speaking about, play the recording back. It's very clear the tone in which these comments were made. This was not to an outsider. This was not a tone of a group of people collaboratively getting together to figure out how to make something work. This was a tone of people that were pretty angry about something, And I, for the life of me, just couldn't understand what it was. So that's all I was saying. I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton, if you took it in any way as reflecting on your dealings with BAC.
This is Howard Fleischer, and I think that this is a good point for me to dovetail into this conversation. And I think that you know, there's tones, there's the sometimes people are saying things because of feeling like they've been wronged, or that there's been some bad things that have happened, or that they're afraid that bad things will happen. And I think that the conversation's not over. And I think that the tone of this whole meeting is really going to be a blend of positive and negative. And that is exactly, you know, what's happening here. You know, on the good side of everything is that, you know, I believe everything is solvable. I think that there's legitimate points that have been raised. And I think that in the spirit of compromise, that Mr. Lyons is there with his ears wide open, and his I mean, a lot of this is out of his own pocket, and his wallet is open to help solve these problems that can be solved and sort of meet the community. I don't think he's here placing himself in the middle of our town to create a centrifuge where it's him against you know, the rest of the world, or fighting for something that really is not to the mutual benefit of the whole community. And from the point of a community, you know, we have to really look at the situation on a couple of different levels. I don't know if I stated, I live at 22 Tavano Road. I abut the property, and I only first stumbled actually, or met Mr. Lyons about a year or two ago, when I happened to decided to explore with my son, at that time, my 7-year-old or 8-year-old, to go looking for frogs in the back, in the woods, and we were frog hunting. And we stumbled upon the path, actually. I didn't even realize that there was a path that was totally cut there. And we walked along the path and ended up in the field by the orchard, and then sitting on the balcony of this building was David with his dog. And I sort of felt, you know, I might have been doing something wrong, like I was on somebody else's property and I didn't have permission to go on that property. Although I felt that it was a property that it was my neighbor, and there's something going on there. And I had the impression that, you know, I wasn't trespassing per se. And, you know, David, with open arms, you know, invited us onto the stoop. He got us a glass of water. He was just a really, really kind soul. And I didn't know this person. I didn't know who my new neighbor was until I ventured into his space and came upon him in this way. And I was really very impressed by what occurred, because it could have been another person sitting there who could have immediately said, you know, what are you doing? Why are you walking on my property? You know, any number of things that could have come across my you know, in front of me and my son. But no, it was somebody there who was really just chilling, and chilling in a way that I kind of immediately gravitated to, because this is the kind of neighbor I want to have. And so, yes, there are things, and there have been fouls made by somebody who is new to the game, but that had and has a vision for this space for the arts and really for the community. Now, look, he can pick up his marbles, go someplace else, and I will then go back to the same fear that I had before the property was bought by him, of what is going to end up in the backyard, adjacent to my backyard. And, you know, I don't know if there's a lot of people on this forum who were involved in the fight that the Tavano neighbors, as well as Morningside and Barnes Road, against another developer who was looking to do cluster housing, which we fought for a number of years, which would have been in my opinion, it would have been a major disaster. And there were things that were looking that we weren't going to be able to stop this developer because of the ways that things were being done in the town. But we all came together as a community. We all made it very clear that that may not be the best option for that land. Now, you know, I don't want to go on too long, and I know it's been a long night, but I just want to say that, you know, we're sort of looking at something that's a work in progress. And seeing that it's a work in progress, you know, you have a choice. You can either help or suggest things, put in an ingredient that might never have been thought of before or what have you. And, or you can do something that doesn't do anything except try to exculpate the person and project from our backyard. You know, I just want to say that there's a lot of validity in what's happening here. And yes, I think that there will be compromises. And yes, you know, do I think that I would be comfortable with a bunch of strangers putting a garden right against, you know, my tree line here and doing things? No. Do I want a fence that's going to be surrounding this whole property and, you know, really create an eyesore and a barrier from me and my neighbors, whether it's next door or across the forest? No. So for me, the question at this point is really to listen and really listen carefully to, you know, what David is saying and what all the neighbors are saying, but listen towards the direction of elevating it, bringing it to something that we all can live with as best as we can. We're no, you know, any compromise never gives you 100% of what you want. But if we're able to really make this a place that we can all be proud of, or be proud saying, you know what, I live next to this, you know, world-class facility that is doing good for the world, that is really, I think, a good thing for me. Now, you know, if David, and again, I go there, and since the time that I stumbled upon David, you know, we've thrown Frisbees together, you know, just enjoying the space. My son and his group of friends who now can't do anything except stay within their own cluster. They ride the bicycles on the property. In fact, one of the kids ended up, you know, having a fall. And David was really very, he didn't even know about it. Nobody complained to him. And it was one of those things where when he did find out about it, he said, all that anybody had to do was just come and tell me, and I'm glad you told me. And he reached out to the family, and, you know, it was all good vibes. It was not bad vibes. And so just on that note of really trying to, you know, get into the vein of good vibes, I just want to make a few things, you know, that are very clear. That there's options, and it may not be 100%, but, you know, let's throw in some options that could be good and explore them and see what we can sort of do to make something better. I personally don't think that, you know, chasing what we have in our back door is worthy of, or shutting it down, or shutting it into a small little microcosm. Not that I want it to be a big thing where it's like a carnival in my backyard or in the woods every night. But, you know, if there is, just like Henry had pointed out, one night that's called an Oktoberfest or an Arttoberfest, and it's a thing happening just like if my son has a graduation party in my backyard, and I apologize to anybody who has to put up with the drumming and the band that's playing, and, you know, as long as we do it with all the right permits and so on, you know, I apologize, but it's one night of doing something that is for the community and celebrating the community. And I don't really see a problem with that. You know, I'm not going to go into each one of the points that was brought out by David, but yes, we're learning. The bees was a very, you know, good concept and good idea, but now learning what has to be done, knowing that there's, you know, all these different varieties of bees, it's something that you don't know until you decide to take that bridge, and then you find out what you have to deal with, and then you deal with it.
I'd like to try to cut you short because I have numerous other people, and it's now 10:30.
Okay, you know, I think that the bottom line is that it really is the essence of David is somebody that you can walk up to and talk to face, and you have a very big surprise because the person is open to it. And I really invite anybody to go to the property, to walk it if they haven't walked it, to see what it can be. And, you know, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I have to say. And I think that, you know, I've made my point.
Thank you. Very informative. I really appreciate your input. Sandy, who's next?
Next speaker is Justine Lackey.
Hi there. My name is Justine Lackey. I live at 34 Stonegate Road. While my property does not abut the Bethany property, Stonegate Road does. BAC is our neighbor. We frequent the facility. We walk the trails. And my daughter did attend camp there last year. I wrote a letter in support of this application, and I just wanted to touch on a few points there. Regarding the camp that my daughter went to, if any of you guys know Harry Potter, there are 4 houses, and when my daughter attended camp there were about 8 kids in the house, so that was about 30 kids, not all of these other numbers that have been banted around. And without a doubt, that camp was run from 9 to 3, so it wasn't 8 hours. I certainly don't think it's a problem. I think we need more recreational options for our children in Ossining. One thing I think is particularly crucial to mention, echoing Bradley Morrison's sentiment, as a parent with 3 school-age children in Ossining and COVID, we have very serious impending budget cuts coming to the school budgets. We haven't seen those happen yet, but I think we can assume that they are going to happen. And if that is the case, places like Bethany are going to be more crucial to our community than ever. In terms of traffic, I might have to wait a beat to turn left or right when I exit Ganong or Stonegate or Cooper to turn onto 133. But a handful of campers in the summer or an extra school bus during the year, that is nothing that would be compared to a huge development that could be there. Lastly, I want to echo what Henry Welch said about how Bethany can benefit Ossining. Like, we can't just think for right now. We need to think about the Ossining we want in 30 years. And we need a facility like this. If you looked at Beacon prior to DIA coming there, it was a wreck, and DIA completely changed Beacon. So if you're not familiar with DIA, it's the art center that sits on the Hudson River, and it's in the former Domino Sugar Factory. It was the economic catalyst that changed that town. I would also point you and ask you to look at the Tarrytown Music Hall. That facility there is an anchor. I am the former co-chair of the Downtown Redevelopment Working Committee in Ossining, and we did point to facilities like Bethany supporting and stimulating Main Street and downtown. So these things are, as Mr. Fleischer pointed out, we can figure these things out. They're not huge problems, and they are certainly, from a nonprofit arts community, a lot less of a threat than a giant commercial real estate development or another commercial opportunity coming in there. So I would ask the board to please approve this application. It is not a huge deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Peggy Monastra. Peggy Monastra.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, my name is Peggy Monastra. I live at 38 Campwoods Grounds. I second many of the things I've already heard said, and I know we're all anxious to go, and I will speak very quickly to the fact that I am incredibly grateful to David and everyone involved with Bethany for what they've done to preserve that land, to preserve that building, and to bring international world-class arts activity to our town. My husband and I both work in the performing arts. We both work at a very high international level with many different artists and creators, and we know that the awareness of what Bethany offers to the international art scene is becoming known. And I have some specific friends who work in the performing arts in New York City who've been able to bring their projects to Bethany to develop them. And it was an invaluable part of the development of this work, which then went on to audiences throughout New York City. And they speak to the value of Bethany as a place to bring and develop this work. And I cheer the ZBA in the support that they've given David in this learning process. And I ask that the community follow suit, because it's clear from what I've been listening to tonight, and that the fact that the mistakes that have been made or the miscalculations from lack of information have been treated with a supportive approach from the board. But I would really encourage the community to take the same approach, because the value of what that property does for all of our value is incredible. And the outdoor space is a key part of what will bring artists there. If you look at artist communities all over the Northeast, all over the US, the grounds are a very, very key part of what brings artists there, because otherwise they could be doing their work within the major cities. So I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's Rebecca. There's no last name, it just says Rebecca.
Next.
I'm sorry. I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself. My name is Rebecca Raymond, and I live at 51 Summerstown, which is basically right at the bottom of Tivano. And I can see the lights of Bethany from my window. I can hear the music from my porch, and I often actually have sat outside and listened to it. I have been to many events at Bethany. My whole family are art lovers and amateur producers of art, and I just wanted to, as a neighbor who lives very, very close by, lend my support to Bethany. When I just moved here 3 years ago, and when I first found out that I was going to be living so close to a arts community, I couldn't believe it. I thought that was just the best thing in the world. And when I got the notice about this meeting and I looked at the 10 things that they wanted to add to their permit, I thought every single one of them was amazing, and I hope that they get what they need. And I understand that they have had problems in the past understanding what they were allowed to do and what they weren't allowed to do, but I've been here since the beginning of the meeting, even though I just joined on in video. It sounds like they're really trying hard to figure out how to work from now on and be respectful to the neighbors, and I just wanted to add my support to them.
Thank you.
And one more speaker, Ann Merla. Again, I guess, is that a second time, Ann, that you want to speak? Ann? No, I think maybe that's it.
I have a phone call on here, 762-6024. Do they
don't have their hand up for...
How do they get in if they're using their phone and not a Zoom?
*9 is how you raise your hand on the phone.
Can you hear me, Sandy? Sorry.
Oh, that's Ann Merla, yes.
I apologize. I was on mute. I didn't realize. I just wanted to add a few things. I appreciate the contribution from the surrounding community. I border the property. My property takes up a large part of their property, and I don't want to see them fail. My husband and I do not want to see condos or a big development go in there at all. That is not what we want. We want to be good neighbors, and we want them to be good neighbors. I've found many things that have been done were not done in the constraints that they're supposed to be done. Okay, all right, let's move on. Going forward, I feel that having 50 children in an outdoor camp in July and August in my backyard would not be something that I would want. I mean, literally my yard. It's right there. However, like I said, they held the camp, which I didn't realize they didn't have a permit for. And someone said, well, it's our fault because we didn't complain about it. I didn't complain because I didn't know. And second of all, it was short-lived and they were kids. They were having fun. They weren't, you know, going out vandalizing the neighborhood. So what am I going to complain about? My fear is having 50 kids, I think they said in one part of their application, and then in another part, 30 kids after school. So to me, I think we need to look at the size and scope of this, but not to totally shut it down, but to all come to an agreement on what can be done at a reasonable level. I had no idea I'd be working from home full time. I mean, nothing I want, envisioned ever. And it's scary. I don't know when I'll ever be, you know, able to go back to my office again. And I work from home full time. So full time, 50, 60, 70 kids in my backyard could be a little disruptive. But, you know, kids are kids. They're not being like, you know, little terrorists. They're kids. But I think we need to look at the scope of it and what can we do to all get along and make it, you know, agreeable to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sandy?
Sandy, you're muted.
Do we have Ann's address, please?
Jerry Gerster, did you want to say something?
No.
Yes. Jerry Gerster?
Just so you know, I'm running out of battery. If I leave suddenly, I crashed. Okay.
Could we have Ann Mira's address, please?
Yes, 21 Stonegate Road.
Thanks very much, Ann.
Thank you.
Is Jerry there? Otherwise, I want to move forward.
He's not answering.
Okay. Do you have no one else?
There's no one else indicating that they want to speak at this time.
Okay, so, Chrissy, with the notice, we're giving 7 days to get answers back in, and any other comments that could come in. So how do you want me to make a motion with regards to leaving the public hearing still open?
Well, what I would suggest is, because the applicant is going to be submitting a lot of additional information, you may want to give the applicant time to submit, and then if you want to close the public hearing, maybe, you know, an additional week after the applicant submits, I'll leave it open for public comments from the public. Alternatively, you could just adjourn the public hearing to the next meeting and then allow the applicant to submit and the public to submit additional comments. I just think if the applicant's going to be submitting additional information, the public may want an opportunity to weigh in on that additional information.
Christy, what was your earlier suggestion? As to process here.
I would say adjourn the public hearing and leave it open until the next meeting. And then the applicant will submit their additional information, and the public will have an opportunity to review it. And then if the board is satisfied at the next meeting, then you can close the public hearing then.
I would move that.
So let's make a motion for that.
Second.
Okay,
So just to be clear though, are we is there another meeting scheduled, or are we gonna wait until the applicant submits and then?
yeah, I'd like to wait for all of the information to come in. Then I would like to have another public hearing to get all those answers back to everybody that he's written in. And then, you know, whether or not we make a decision that evening or go into another meeting, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Is it possible?
Our meeting could be scheduled for July 20th if you need it. It's a Monday night again.
How about that,
Why don't we continue the public hearing to July 20th, and then if
Fine.
it turns out that we need more time, we can adjourn that meeting.
okay. Works for me.
Mr. Lyons, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I was just hoping to have make the schedule for the next meeting as soon as possible. Nothing will happen this year, but I'd like to put this to bed so we can, continue to work together to make this better. It will be hard to just hang over everything.
Well, you need to button your shit up.
Okay, so if everyone's in agreement, I would recommend that the motion be to adjourn the public hearing to be continued at the zoning board's July 20th meeting.
I'm in agreement.
So, James made the motion and I'll second it.
Okay, David O, you want to make a?
Vote.
I'm in favor. So I need a second motion to July 20th.
I second the motion. I consider.
Okay. Thank you all. Any questions, Chrissy? We all understand?
No, as long as all the board votes in favor, which it appears everyone does. Yeah, so hopefully we can get that information from the applicant, and then the public will have an opportunity to review it and continue the discussion.
Right. Tomorrow I will send to Sandy 4 or 5 letters that came in that had numerous questions that she should email to the applicant so they could answer them all at once.
Is it possible to get copies of all the letters that were written?
Yeah, they're going to be online, sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sandy? Sandy?
Yes.
Make sure all the correspondence that were received is online for everybody to read.
Okay, will do.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Lyons?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you. Our pleasure. We'll talk to you on the 20th. Chrissy, if we want to have preliminary, just let us know.
Okay.
Hey, could David, could your responses to the various points raised and letters that you've not yet received, could they all be made available in sort of one document to the board?
I will put all of my documentation together in one file, yes.
That'd be great.
Sal and Chris.
That's perfect.
Sal and
Dave.
Do we have to do something formal in order to either individually or as a board go to the property and see the property and roam the property?
You can't go as a board. If you want to go pass by, go right ahead.
There could be a site visit, but if you have a quorum of the board present, which is 3 members, then it has to be noticed as a meeting. So if 2 board members or 1 board member want to go at a time, then, assuming the applicant is okay with it, I don't want to put words in his mouth, then you can just go and see the site. But I think a site visit would probably be productive under these circumstances, as long as everyone's comfortable with it.
I've already been there.
I've been there.
To come, even my neighbors. If you haven't been to Bethany and you haven't met me personally, please come. I'm generally there most of the time. And in the letter that I passed around to the neighbors, I put in my personal cell phone number and my email address. Please feel free to reach out. I am available.
Okay. Everybody all right? Thank you so much. Enjoy the 4th of July weekend. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll get together real soon.
Bye, Sal.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody. Thank
Bye.
you.
All right.
I